Hi guys, it's me, HD, and welcome to Race Day in Austin, Texas for the United States Grand Prix of 2025. A day that could be crucial in a few weeks' time in deciding the destination of the Drivers' Championship, as now we clearly have three competitors for the Drivers' Championship. The championship leader, of course, Oscar Piastri, Lando Norris, and now hunting for his fifth consecutive title, Max Verstappen. And like I said today, given where certain drivers are on the grid, this could be really crucial in swinging the pendulum towards, let's say, Max Verstappen on pole, or even Lando Norris, who is on the front row, remember, in the McLaren. Oscar Piastri, the championship leader, down in sixth. He's had a horrible weekend, really. And if he can't massively reverse his grid position today, then again, this could be a massive turning point in the championship fight, as we've only got 6 Grand Prix today to go. After, of course, today, it'll be 5 Grand Prix left. After this Grand Prix, we've got Mexico, Brazil, Las Vegas, Qatar, and Abu Dhabi. The Formula One season ends in about 6 weeks' time, which will fly by, given how many races we've got left. It's not 6 weeks, actually. It's, 7 weeks, I think it is? Yeah, 7 weeks or something like that. And yeah, we are in for a very intense final few races. And this Grand Prix today is going to be a good one. I don't think it's going to be a classic, necessarily, but it's going to be a very competitive one. The fight for the win, the fight for the podium, it's going to be a good one. And like I said, a crucial race. A race that absolutely cannot be missed. And good to see you guys here along for what is one of the most, I think, intriguing races of the season. And we know from history, obviously, me doing these watch-alongs, the US Grand Prix does tend to be consistently one of the best Grand Prix of a Formula One season. Yeah, there's been a couple maybe average or slightly above average ones, in the last few years, but consistently, this is one of the top, I would say, 3 or 4 Grand Prix on the calendar, and I'm very much looking forward to this one today. Hope you guys are as well, and yeah, great to see you guys, as I said, and no matter what time zone you're in, what part of the world you're from, hope you're all doing as well as possible, given whatever circumstances you are going through, and I hope you can join me today in enjoying and watching along this United States Grand Prix from the Circuit of the Americas in Austin, Texas. And yeah, we're going to, obviously in this race build-up, we're going to go through the usual stuff. We'll go through, what happened yesterday, what the grid makeup is looking like, and also go through all of the data from not only qualifying yesterday, but the sprint race, because the sprint race and the data from it does give us a decent indication as to what the race pace could be like in this Grand Prix. So we'll go through that. Obviously, I'll give my own predictions. We'll also get into tyre strategy and what the predicted race strategies are for the race. And also, I'll make sure to let you know who's got what types of tyres available for this Grand Prix and who could do what on strategy. Obviously, I want to hear from you guys as well. Let me know in the live chat as we go along. What do you think is going to happen today? And do you think Max Verstappen can win his 5th World Championship? Especially if he wins today. Let me know in the live chat. And we'll get to your comments through this build-up. And then, as you can see, in an hour and 55 minutes from now, we will get into the race itself. Just so you know, this will be a solo watch-along. My co-commentator, Niblo, who usually joins me, is unable to join this evening. Hopefully, the next watch-along he'll be on for will be Brazil, which is in 3 weeks' time. If it's not that one, though, it'll definitely be the Las Vegas Grand Prix, which is in a month from now. But, yeah, this is going to be a solo watch-along. And yeah, hopefully this will be a good Grand Prix. So yeah, make sure to post in the chat your thoughts ahead of this Grand Prix. And as usual, before I get into things, there is a poll running at the top of the live chat. Let me know in that poll right before we get into the race. And that poll obviously will keep running until the start of the Grand Prix. Who do you think wins the Grand Prix today? The options in the poll are Max Verstappen, Lando Norris, Charles Leclerc, and George Russell. That is the top 4 on the grid. Out of those 4, who do you think wins the Grand Prix today? Again, let me know. And then right before we get into the race, we'll see who you voted for as the most likely race winner of this US Grand Prix. But let's get into the results of qualifying. And in terms of pole position and the fight for pole, it wasn't really a surprise what happened. Max Verstappen was just on a different level yesterday. Not just with qualifying, but the sprint as well. He just was way too good. He is on his absolute best form right now. And that's what's making him so hard to beat in these last few races. And that's why George Russell, what he did in Singapore is so impressive because of the form that Verstappen is in. But yeah, Max, just way too good compared to the rest of the field. Lando Norris in second. Norris, I must say, did well to make sure he got that second place. He was not going to get pole. He just doesn't have enough pace to do that. But it wasn't looking necessarily, super likely that he was going to be on the front row, but he managed to pull out a good enough lap to get himself on the front row and puts himself at least in a good position for the start if he can get a better, start off the line than Max Verstappen. Of course, we saw last year, Lando was on pole and Max was second, and Max in second was the one who took initially the lead from Lando going up the inside. And of course, second place has the inside line for turn 1. Obviously, though, in the end, it, it led to Charles Leclerc taking the lead from 4th place on the grid. But, yeah, it'll be interesting to see how that dynamic plays out in the first corner, given that, again, the roles are reversed. Lando, of course, last time left the inside line wide open for Max to take the gap. Max will not be as friendly as Lando was last year. Charles Leclerc third. Leclerc doing an absolutely brilliant job. One of the best laps of Leclerc's season, quite frankly, to get third on the grid. And so nearly put himself amazingly on the front row. And actually, Leclerc is higher on the grid for this race than he was last year. And of course, last year, he dominantly won this race. He's not going to do so today because the Ferrari car is nowhere near as good as last year's car. But it is just incredible what he was able to pull out at that final lap of qualifying. Again, he's so good at doing that, is Leclerc. George Russell as well had a good session. 4th on the grid, so close, as you can see, to getting on the front row as well. He was only, a couple hundredths of a second away from Lando Norris. Mercedes, a bit stronger in qualifying, just like Ferrari, than I expected them to be. I think Russell will be a tad disappointed to be behind Leclerc, but Russell, I think, has put himself in a good position to possibly get a podium today. A race win, I don't think is quite possible, but a podium, I think, definitely is on for Mercedes and would be a good result if they could get that. Lewis Hamilton 5th, good qualifying from him. Oscar Piastri 6th, and pretty much 0.3 of a second slower than his teammate, which is pretty much the gap that it was between Norris and Piastri in sprint qualifying. So the gap didn't get worse, obviously didn't get better, but because of the improvement of Ferrari and Mercedes over a single lap, that's what caused Piastri to go down the field to 6th. Piastri yesterday just was not good enough. I'm not sure if there was, damage to the car still from what happened in the sprint or what, but he was poor in qualifying. It was one of the worst performances, probably the worst performance from Piastri in qualifying that I've seen this year. I know he crashed out in Baku, but at least in Baku, he did have good pace. Yesterday, he just did not have any pace at all. And as you can see, only just out-qualified Antonelli and Oliver Bearman, who put in an incredible lap, 8th on the grid. What a job by him. And as you can see, Sainz and Alonso only just behind as well. Piastri, less than a 10th ahead of those 4 cars. It could have been a lot worse if Piastri had been even worse with his final lap than he was. So yeah, Piastri in a poor position. But, qualifying, as we know, you don't score points for qualifying. Obviously, we've had a sprint this weekend. Points were scored for that, which definitely hurt Piastri's championship a bit compared to Max Verstappen. But in the race today, he can definitely rescue his championship, no doubt about it. And he doesn't need to beat Verstappen and Norris necessarily to do, say, a rescue job. As long as Oscar Piastri finishes 3rd, I wouldn't say it's good enough necessarily because he's not really had a good enough weekend, but it would be really as good of a recovery as he could do. And at least if he does finish 3rd and let's say Max wins and Lando finishes 2nd, he would only lose 3 points to Lando and only give away another 10 points to Max as opposed to an extra 5 or 6 points on top of what it, possibly could be if he doesn't finish on the podium. So if he can get on the podium, that is a very good rescue job because he needs that going into these final few races. He cannot afford big chunks of points to be taken out of his championship lead. Whether that's by Verstappen or Lando Norris, he just cannot afford for that to happen. But he will make progress today. I don't think he'll finish in 6th place. I think definitely he finishes in the top 5. Podium, though, is going to be difficult because McLaren do not have a significant pace advantage compared to, all of the cars around them like they did, 2 or 3 months ago. So, not going to be easy. And remember, Piastri, this is one of his weaker circuits, which hasn't helped him this weekend. Antonelli 7th. Antonelli, I think, will be disappointed not to be in 6th ahead of Piastri, but 7th is still okay. Who knows what can happen at the start? Maybe he could gain a couple positions. But yeah, Antonelli is absolutely a factor in this race in terms of who will finish in the top 4 or 5 positions. He's going to be right in that fight. So keep an eye out for Antonelli. Again, what a job by Bearman out qualifying Sainz and Alonso, who also were pretty good in qualifying yesterday. And then the rest of the field, Hülkenberg 11th. Hülkenberg and Sauber were just disappointing, quite frankly. Liam Lawson 12th. Lawson, I think, did pretty, I wouldn't say pretty well, but well enough, given that Racing Bulls have not been that quick this weekend. What it does show, though, is just how disappointing Isaac Hadjar's crash at the start of qualifying was. Because if Hadjar had not crashed and had done his best lap in qualifying, Isaac could have made Q3 yesterday. So that just is increasingly disappointing from Hadjar in terms of what he actually did, which was crash out in the first sector of his first flying lap in qualifying. Sonoda 13th, he was poor yesterday. And then you got the 2 Alpines, 14th and 15th. That's the best qualifying Alpine I've had for, got to be 5 or 6 races at least, maybe more. And then Bortoletto 16th, a poor weekend Bortoletto's having, which is a shame because he's been so consistently good for quite a bit. Esteban Ocon 17th. Ocon, initially when he got eliminated in Q1, I thought, it's not that bad because the car's not that good. But then Oliver Bearman went and did what he did. So I think Ocon, in retrospect, will be disappointed that he's not at least, 12th, 13th on the grid, given where his teammate is. But yeah, we'll see what Ocon can do from 17th. Lance Stroll, 18th. Lance Stroll has a 5-place penalty for this race. He's going to start, I believe, in 19th. I believe Isaac Hadjar is going to start from the pit lane. Yeah, Stroll get a 5-place grid penalty for collision with Ocon at turn 1 in the sprint. Thoroughly deserved. I didn't actually see the incident until a couple hours ago, and yeah, it's such a poor driving error from Lance Stroll. And then Alex Albon, poor from him as well, 19th. He exceeded track limits at, was it turn 15, I think it was? Caught a bit of oversteer, went over the track limit, and that's what got his lap time deleted, and he will be 18th on the grid when really he should be around 10th, 11th place, probably at worst. So, yeah, disappointing there from Albon, who has been a bit disappointing these last, say, 2-3 races. Interestingly, since Carlos Sainz has got onto his best form since Baku, Albon has basically gone into the form that Carlos Sainz was in, for most of this season. They've reversed roles, if you will, which is a bit weird, but we'll see what Albon can do. I'm pretty sure he has scored points here from a low down grid position. I might be wrong, but I seem to remember that he has done that. I mean, he's got plenty of experience doing it anyway at other tracks. But, yeah, keep your eye on Albon. We know Williams like to go very long with their first stint, and I am assuming that Albon is probably going to do 25, 30 laps for the first stint to get himself properly into the order. And then, yeah, Isaac Hadjar will be last on the grid. But let's get into the sector time data to understand why it ended up the way it did. First sector, absolutely dead level between Red Bull and McLaren. And actually, Ferrari, Mercedes, and even Williams right in there as well. Incredibly close between the top 5 teams in the first sector, which is really what you want to see. Aston Martin, slight drop off to them. Alpine, pretty good first sector compared to what they've been doing in aero heavy parts of, say, certain tracks we've been to lately. You would have expected them to be pretty much at the back, but yeah, Alpine a bit stronger this weekend. And just exemplifying how impressive Oliver Behrman's qualifying was, he only did the 8th best first sector out of, well, Haas did the 8th best first sector out of all the teams, yet they ended up being, the 5th highest team in qualifying. Just an incredible effort from Behrman to end up in 8th, despite clearly the Haas being definitely slower than the Williams and Aston Martin car. There is no doubt about that. Sauber, very disappointing. Remember, Sauber were 3rd quickest in the first sector in sprint qualifying on Friday. But for some reason, nearly the slowest in actual qualifying. And then Racing Bulls, the slowest team, which is a bit surprising, given that in high-speed corners, they tend to be pretty good. Middle sector, obviously with the long back straight, some slow corners. Mercedes, pretty good in the middle sector, just like McLaren, and really Red Bull and Ferrari also pretty good as well. Again, very close between those 4 teams. Slight drop off then to Sauber, Aston Martin and Williams. Again, Haas, only the 8th best team in the middle sector, despite Behrman ending up in qualifying where he did. And then Racing Bulls and Alpine completing the rest of the field. And then the final sector, which is a mix of slow speed and high speed corners, McLaren and Red Bull, again, pretty much on the same pace. Slight drop off then to Ferrari and Mercedes. Aston Martin, once again, consistently pretty good. Aston Martin didn't actually do their optimal best lap time in Q3. Alonso really should have been probably 8th on the grid, but he just didn't do his absolute best time and put together all the best sectors in Q3 when obviously it mattered most, which is why he's 10th and Behrman's 8th and Carlos Sainz is in 9th. Williams, I've got to say, surprising they were only the 8th best team in the final sector. But yeah, Behrman, again, still not, say, the fifth best team, Haas, in this part of the lap, but still ended up the fifth best team in qualifying. Behrman simply delivering a great lap when it mattered most, whilst the others, Sainz, Alonso, and more, didn't quite do so. But yeah, if you look at the gap, really, between the front four teams through the sectors, and these sectors, by the way, this is not the sectors that they did in Q3. This is all of the best sector times done throughout the entire of qualifying. So certain drivers would have done their best sector 2 or sector 3 in Q2 rather than Q3. Again, if you look at the gap between the front four teams, they're all pretty much on similar pace. If you look at the gap between Red Bull and McLaren, they're almost literally on the same pace in the first sector. McLaren then 300ths quicker in the middle sector, and then another 300ths quicker in the final sector. So McLaren were actually quicker in qualifying yesterday if you add up all of the best sectors by just over half a tenth. They were quicker than Red Bull. But because Lando did not produce his absolute best lap in Q3 and Max pretty much did, that's why Max is on pole. So Lando could have actually, and I think you could easily argue should have took pole, because the pace was actually there, but he didn't produce it when it mattered. And that's what I love about the qualifying system we have, is it's about producing when it matters. You can't just get pole by setting a really good lap 20 minutes into an hour-long session like we used to have, 20, 30 years ago. You have to actually consistently be on it, and it rewards more so not just consistency but clutchness, let's say, in terms of producing the lap when it matters, rather than just producing great pace early on and then not quite delivering when it actually matters in Q3. So yeah, McLaren technically were faster in qualifying than Red Bull, but again, they didn't show it. Mercedes, if you compare them to McLaren, Mercedes were half a tenth off in the first sector, and then were actually quicker by 300ths in the middle sector, but then were a tenth off in the final sector. So overall, they were about, a tenth, just over a tenth of a second off the pace of McLaren. So it shows Mercedes genuinely did have a pretty fast car yesterday, but again, didn't produce it when it mattered most in terms of being able to be on the top three on the grid. And if they had produced it when it mattered, when, say, Lando and McLaren didn't, then Russell, I think, quite comfortably would have ended up on the front row of the grid. Ferrari, and this is why I praised their two drivers, because they were, if you look at all the sector times, Ferrari were the slowest of the front four teams. But because the two drivers produced their laps when it mattered, to get the grid positions they did, that's why they're third and fifth on the grid, as opposed to where they probably should be, which is more like fifth and sixth, or something like that. So in terms of the pecking order, if I just go back to the results quickly of the top 10 in qualifying, in terms of who's quicker out of Red Bull and McLaren, I would say McLaren, I think, do have a slightly faster car, but because Max is in the Red Bull and Lando's in the McLaren, and Max is, I think, probably a couple tenths of a second quicker than Lando, maybe more, that's why it ended up the way it did. But it is still close between McLaren and Red Bull. I'm not saying Red Bull are miles behind, absolutely not. But McLaren, I would say, by maybe a tenth at most, or even just around a tenth of a second. Yeah, I'd say McLaren have probably got the fastest car. Red Bull then second, third, Mercedes not very far behind, and then fourth, I think, Ferrari, which again just shows how great a performance Leclerc and Hamilton put in to put themselves in a pretty good grid position for what they actually deserve, to be honest. In terms of the fifth best team, again, if you go look at the optimal laps in terms of what the optimal lap for each team was, Aston Martin were actually the fastest midfield team. But again, they didn't produce it when it mattered. So Aston Martin, 5th. 6th, you'd probably have to say Williams. And then 7th, I'd have to say Haas ahead of Sauber in 8th, Racing Bulls 9th, and Alpine in 10th, which again shows that both Alpine drivers performed well yesterday. Slowest car, yet they both got through to Q2, so good performance by Gasly and Colapinto. But what do you call it? Yeah, that's what I think the pecking order is for this Grand Prix. We'll see if it translates itself in the actual race itself. But let's get into some other bits of data, which obviously is important for this Grand Prix, such as the speed trap data. Of course, this data collected from the speed trap located at the end of the back straight, which is the highest speed part of the track. And Mercedes, very good top speed. They really got the downforce levels just right to be quick enough in the corners, but also efficient in a straight line. Aston Martin as well, pretty quick in a straight line. I've got to say, that's an area they were quite weak in the last couple of years. And it's something I've noticed in the last few months they really improved on, which is why they're quite a bit quicker now than they were in the first few races of the season. Williams as well, pretty good top speed. Alpine, probably a tad why Alpine have been decent this weekend. Is because of that top speed being pretty good. And then Red Bull, smack bang in the middle of the pack, pretty much like Ferrari. McLaren, the slowest in the speed trap, and Haas only just above them. Again, making Behrman's performance look so good. But for McLaren, yeah, the slowest top speed, 4 kilometers an hour slower than Mercedes down the straights, which is not as big of a gap as we see at other tracks, but it is still a significant amount. So if Mercedes do get within a second of a McLaren with the DRS, watch out, because that might be a big problem for the McLarens. But yeah, in terms of the top speeds, it doesn't really look like a massive surprise. And they're all relatively on similar top speeds. And that, again, is not a surprise, because this track, you can't really, if you take quite a bit more wing off than other cars, you can't really gain that much from it. It's like a medium downforce level circuit, this circuit of the Americas track. So this data, again, not really surprising, but keep an eye, like I said, out for anyone who does get within a second of the McLarens, because McLaren have clearly compromised themselves with their top speed to make sure they can be quick in the corners, which they are, but not quite fast enough. And also, let's touch on this, which is the data from the sprint race. And what this is the average race pace of the teams that did the sprint race. Other than McLaren, as you see at the bottom, both McLarens obviously retired from the Grand Prix because of the start line collision. But for the other teams, Red Bull were the quickest by a couple tenths over Mercedes. Williams were about half a second off the pace, and were actually very slightly quicker than Ferrari. I am curious to see whether they will be able to show that today. We have noticed Williams have had a pretty good race pace all season. One great example of that was Baku. That's why Carlos Sainz really was able to finish on the podium. So keep your eye out for Williams. I have a good feeling about them. And as well, Carlos Sainz, we know, is pretty good at this track. Finished second for Ferrari at this circuit last year. And then a big drop-off then to Haas, Racing Bulls. Data kind of skewed when it comes to Racing Bulls and Aston Martin, because Hadjar and Alonso, respectively, for those two teams, who are their best drivers, were not able to show their best pace. Obviously, Alonso wasn't, because he got knocked out the first lap. So Aston Martin, I expect to be a bit quicker than they showed in the sprint. But yeah, Alpine then and Sauber at the back. But again, with Williams, I think that's one thing to keep our eyes on. Can Williams show that similar level of race pace in the Grand Prix? If they can, they won't be fighting for the podium because they're too far back on the grid, but they might be able to finish in the top maybe 6 if they do have that level of race pace. But ultimately, we'll have to see where they are at in the Grand Prix. Obviously, depends on what goes on at the start. You never know what can happen at the start. Look at the sprint where we had a multi-car collision. But yeah, that is the sprint pace. We'll keep that in mind when it comes to the Grand Prix. But as we've got just, an hour and a half to go until the Grand Prix gets underway, let me get into my final race predictions for this United States Grand Prix. My predictions are not really a surprise. I think this prediction is pretty likely going to happen. I think most people would agree with this prediction. And Max Verstappen, I think, will win the United States Grand Prix by about 12 seconds. Anywhere between 10 and 15 seconds, I think, will be about the gap between Verstappen and Norris. Third, George Russell. I'm pretty confident he finishes on the podium. Leclerc fourth. I think Leclerc will just about hold off Piastri in the McLaren. Leclerc, the better driver and also performing better this weekend than Piastri, and I think that's what helps him get the job done in securing fourth ahead of Piastri. Lewis Hamilton, I think, will finish sixth, just ahead of Antonelli. And Sainz, I think, will be only a couple seconds or so behind in that battle in eighth, and Alonso not far behind as well in ninth, and same for Behrman, who I think will clinch a point for the home team, Haas F1, at their home Grand Prix in Texas. So that's my prediction. Let me know, guys, in the live chat whether you agree or disagree. And remember, there is a poll running at the top of the chat where I've asked you guys who will win the US Grand Prix today. Will it be Max Verstappen, Lando Norris, Charles Leclerc, or George Russell? Let me know between now and lights out, and I will see who you guys vote for. But I will just get the countdown back on screen. Before I do, though, just wanted to say quickly, make sure to subscribe for more content like this, because we will be doing qualifying and race watch-alongs for almost every Grand Prix between now and the end of the season, as we cover the final few races and this, obviously, Drivers' Championship battle. Bottom right of the screen, you can subscribe right there. And make sure to smash the like button. It does help the channel in the algorithm. We're currently on 13 likes. Let's try and get up to 20 or 25 plus likes in the next, say, half an hour or so. But yeah, hour and 26 minutes to go until we are underway. So still quite a bit of time. And before I come to you guys in the chat to see what you think, what was it? Sorry for the pause there. I was just looking at something on X. But what I wanted to look at was what Pirelli have said is the best race strategy for today. And let me just find it. I saw it earlier. So just give me a second. Here we go. So according to F1 on their website, they're predicting a one-stop strategy, where the best strategy is to start on the medium and finish with a hard tyre. I think that's pretty much what most people did last year. The hard tyre, though, has not been used really at all this weekend. It was used, I think, for like the first half of practice one, and that's it. So there's not a lot of data on that tyre. So I wouldn't be surprised if we see the soft tyre used quite a bit. There are other strategy options. There are two other, what do you call it? There are two-stop strategy options, which is start on the soft and then go on to 2 sets of mediums, or start on the soft and go on to another set of mediums and then finish the race on the soft tyre. Or the second or alternate one-stop strategy compared to the preferred one-stop strategy is start on the medium and finish on the soft compound tyre, but you would have to go quite a bit longer into the race on that, medium tyre you start on to finish the race then on the soft. So looks like it's going to be a one-stop race, probably a medium to hard strategy for most cars. Not everyone, though. I think we will get some drivers doing some alternate strategies out there. And in regards to the drivers in terms of what fresh tyres they have, both McLarens, both Ferraris, both Red Bulls, and both Mercedes cars have one new set of hard tyres, and they all have one new set of mediums, except for Tsunoda, who has two new sets of mediums, and Tsunoda also has one new set of soft compound tyres. So it seems to me pretty much bang on that Piastri, Norris, Leclerc, Hamilton, Verstappen, Russell, and Antonelli are all going to do a one-stop strategy and are all probably going to start on the medium and finish on the hard tyre. Obviously, they're not all going to stop on the same lap, though. Interestingly, both Aston Martins do not have a new set of hard tyres, and Alonso does not even have a new set of any of the tyres. So he'll be slightly compromised on that. But yeah, looks like a pretty standard, I would say, one-stop strategy for this Grand Prix. And in terms of race strategy, if we just get into that now. I mean, for Max Verstappen, let me just adjust my chair quickly. For Max Verstappen, what do you call it? His race is very simple. Because of the pace he's got, all he's got to do is hold on to the lead on the exit of the first corner, and obviously on the first lap, and then build, say, a 3 to 4 second lead at minimum. And then all he's got to do at that point is cover off whoever's in second or third, if third is also pretty close to second. So for Max, pretty simple race. It's all down really for Max to him, and can he pull away from the rest of the pack? If he can, at the rate that we're expecting him to, then he should win the race pretty comfortably. He's not going to absolutely destroy everyone. Red Bull are not that quick, and Max is not, that quick, but he should win in pretty comfortable fashion, I would say. In regards to the rest, though, again, it is interesting. Lando Norris, if he is second at the end of the first lap, I think the only thing McLaren can do compared to Max and Red Bull is go longer on their tyres. How much longer will they need to go? It depends on what the gap is when we get to that first pit window. The first pit window opens, I think, around lap 20. So let's say Max Verstappen pits on lap 20. The gap by lap 20, if Max pulls away at the rate that we're expecting, the gap is probably going to be, say, 4 or 5 seconds. So let's say it's 5 seconds when Max pits. If Lando can then do another, say, 5 or 6 laps and then make his pit stop for fresh hard tyres, then obviously McLaren will have the fresher tyres going forward for the rest of the race. For the final, what would it be, like 30 laps or so? If that doesn't work, then simply Max and Red Bull were too quick. But that is the only thing they can do. McLaren with Lando should be quick enough not to worry about the cars behind. So, yeah, that's the only thing they can do. I don't think they're going to be quick enough to do an undercut on Max and for it to work, because I think Max will build up a big enough gap to protect himself from that. So yeah, that's the only thing McLaren can do. Go 5-6 laps longer, pit around lap 25, 26, maybe lap 28 if they can get that far. without losing too much time in comparison to Max. And then on the fresher tyres, see what they can do. That is actually what they did last year compared to Verstappen, if you remember. Max pitted around I can't remember exactly what it was, but it was around lap 20. Lando went quite a few laps longer than Max and then had fresher tyres. And then, of course, at the end of the race, they were wheel to wheel, and Lando so nearly got third from Verstappen. And obviously, in the end, it was a 5-second penalty that cost him by overtaking Max off the track. So if they replicate the same strategy, maybe it will work again in allowing Lando to have the chance to win the race. But I do feel like the Red Bull is in better condition today than it was this time last year. So, yeah, we'll have to see whether that does truly work out for them. But that's the only thing, like I said, McLaren can do. For George Russell and Mercedes, if they can get ahead of Leclerc and Ferrari at the start, that would be crucial for their race, because I think if he's behind Leclerc still on the first lap, then that's going to be basically his battle for the race, is getting past and clearing the Ferraris to try and finish on the podium. But as well, if he can finish ahead of Leclerc, or get ahead rather of Leclerc on the first lap or early on, it will help protect him from Oscar Piastri in the McLaren, who you would imagine will be faster today. So the start is very, very important for Russell. I'd say even more important probably for him than it is for Max or Lando, because for Max and Lando, even if Lando gets into the lead, that doesn't necessarily mean Lando's going to win. And even if Max holds the lead in the first lap, again, doesn't necessarily mean he's going to win. It's what happens after that in terms of the pace that those cars and drivers have. So, yeah, for Russell, start is very, very important. If he gets ahead of Leclerc on the start, then if he can keep with Lando, and what I mean by that is if he can keep about a second to 2 seconds behind, then he could probably do the same as Lando, go longer on his tyres, and maybe come back at Verstappen that way. So Russell, if he's going to get into the fight for the win, that's the only way that's going to happen, is if Russell gets up to at least third and keeps close to Lando and is only, say, 5 seconds at most behind Max when Max pits. And then, Russell can go, say, 5-6 laps longer, have the fresher tyres, and then again, we'll see whether he has enough pace to maybe fight for the win. Ferrari, I think, will go backwards today. As I proved with the sector time data, they are higher on the grid than they deserve to be. They didn't really have the pace to be third on the grid. They capitalized on others not quite having the best final laps in Q3. So that's why they are where they are. And yeah, they're going to be looking more in their mirrors today. I don't think really Ferrari can do anything that different on strategy that is going to really help them, other than don't pit too early or too late. I think if they just copy the normal strategy plan of start on the medium, pit on lap 20, and then finish the race on hard tyres, then they should then end up getting the best result they can out of whatever pace they've got, which I'm not expecting it to be that good. And for Kimi Antonelli, in 7th place, I just want to touch on him. I am interested in Antonelli because, and what I mean by that is Mercedes, if you look at the last couple years, they do tend to split strategy quite often on the grid. And what I mean by that is they tend to start their two drivers on different tyres quite often. They do it quite a bit more than other teams do. And I do wonder, because Antonelli's 7th and has nothing to lose, whether they will start Antonelli on a different tyre. If he starts on the hard tyre, then Antonelli's going to be really going a long way rather into the race before pitting. If he starts on the hard tyre, really, he should be going, until probably lap 30, maybe lap 35 before he pits for a set of mediums. But then again, maybe they'll start him on the soft compound tyre. If he does that, then I think he may as well do a 2-stop race, even if that is the slower strategy. If you were to do a 2-stop, I think the best way to do it would probably be start on the soft, pit on, say, lap 10, and then do, get mediums on, do a, say, 20 to 25 lap stint, and then do another 20 laps to finish the race on another set of hard tyres, or even, not hard tyres, another set of mediums, or even hard tyres. So yeah, keep your eye on Antonelli, because I think they might do something different with him to get him in the race. And finally, for Oscar Piastri, a lot of his race depends on his own performance, in terms of he can't rely, I think, too much on a good strategy to get himself up the field. I think he needs to just be performing a lot better today than he was yesterday, really. Strategically, though, I think if they do the same with Oscar that they're going to do with Lando, which I think is run him longer into the race, I think that's probably the best thing to do with Oscar, because if Oscar isn't quite at it, then the best way to still get him maybe up a position or two is to utilize the possibility of fresh tyres. The McLaren should be quicker than the Ferrari and probably the Mercedes on the same length of tyres, but with even fresher tyres, that should help even more, especially for Piastri, who's on the back foot a bit. So I think he probably also goes a few laps longer than, say, Max and the 2 Ferrari cars. Another driver, though, I want to touch on in terms of strategy is Carlos Sainz. Williams, as we know, good race pace, manage their tyres well, and they do tend to go a bit longer with their first stint than others. Carlos, I think, will start on the medium compound tyre. If he can go until, say, lap 30 on the medium and then pit for a fresher set of hard tyres, he might be able to pick up a decent handful of points, because I expect Williams will be pretty quick then on those fresher tyres. What will make things interesting, though, is if Williams are on pretty much the same pace as Ferrari, maybe even slightly quicker, if Leclerc holds on to third for that first stint of the race until, say, lap 20, that really brings Williams into play. Because if Williams are in clear air as quick, if not slightly quicker, than Ferrari by, say, 1/10 of a second per lap, like they were in the sprint, then if Williams do go a few laps longer on their tyres than, say, Ferrari and even Mercedes do, that might bring Carlos Sainz into the fight for not quite the podium, but maybe a top 5 or a top 6. So keep your eye on Carlos Sainz, because I feel like if he has a decent start and that pace is there comparatively to Ferrari and even Mercedes that they had in the sprint, that Sainz might be able to get a proper good result today. And again, if Ferrari are hanging on to third or even second and are holding the pack behind up, then that might allow Williams to get properly in the fight and maybe pick up quite a handful of points. Carlos Sainz, by the way, can go up to 9th of the championship, amazingly. today. If he finishes where he starts the race from and Isaac Hadjar does not score a point today, which is unlikely, of course, Hadjar starting at the back, then Carlos Sainz will go up to ninth in the Drivers' Championship. What a turnaround. Because I think, was it 3 or 4 races ago, Carlos was 16th or 17th in the championship and was looking completely down and out for the season. But yeah, he's right where he needs to be at the moment. So yeah, keep your eye on Sainz. Anyway, that's enough of strategy talk. Now time to see what you guys have to say in the live chat, as we've got just over an hour left until the race is underway here at the US Grand Prix. And yeah, keep your comments coming in regards to what you think is going to happen today, and also championship wise, do you think Max Verstappen can win his 5th World Championship? Can he do the comeback, or do you think that he's left it a bit too late? Let me know in the live chat. Come to think of it, with Max Verstappen, if he had not had that spin at Silverstone and had not had that penalty in Spain, he would have an extra, probably 14 points right now, which would have him only 41 points behind. Imagine if he had those extra points, he'd be in a very good position going into this race. But yeah, let me know what you think, and we'll get to your thoughts in a moment. I am going to quickly have a drink, because I've been absolutely going on and on here on the mic, and my throat's a bit sore. So yeah, I'll be back with you guys to read out your comments in a sec. Right, let's see what you guys have to say. Paulie, good to see you, and good to see Will, Serigara, and everyone in the chat. Paulie's saying they were predicting a change in wind direction for today's race. Do you think this will impact the race and assist some teams more than others? Not really. The weather has been pretty consistent this weekend, and I don't think the wind direction is really drastically different, let's say, to what it has been, to the point where it's going to, completely destroy certain teams' hopes. I don't see that happening, quite frankly. Crystal, good to see you, saying Max Verstappen inevitable. Absolutely. And also saying something that I really hope doesn't happen, and that is that Arteta might win a Prem title in 9 months' time. Let's hope that does not happen. I will say, I know we don't talk football too much here, obviously, because this is an F1 channel, but I am amazed that Liverpool have just lost to Man United. Absolutely amazed. Not only have lost, but they lost at Anfield. Liverpool are in absolute tatters right now. And United looks like they're back to being a good team for the first time in a few years. But yeah, times are a changing on the football front. So regardless, I'll come to a realization we may need Arsenal, to be honest. No. Do not say that. Ghost asking, what are your predictions for Ferrari? By the way, good to see you after yesterday. You said, am I delusional? Yesterday, you said in the chat, am I delusional for thinking Hamilton or Leclerc could get a top three? And I said you were. How wrong was I? Because Leclerc ended up obviously in third, so you were absolutely bang on. Let me know what you think, Ghost. And we'll see if it does come true for the Ferraris. Yeah, I don't see them on the podium. I think they are going to need a bit of fortune to go their way to get on the podium today. They just don't have enough pace for it. As I showed with the sector time data, they didn't actually have a fast enough car to be in the top three, but they got it because others didn't quite deliver their best laps when it mattered. So, you know, that you can get away with that in qualifying. You can't get away with that over 56 laps. So, yeah, I think Ferrari at best finish fourth, but even that is going to be a closely fought thing. I could easily see them finishing fifth and sixth today, which is pretty much, I would say, what I was expecting from them coming into the weekend. I wasn't expecting Ferrari to be good at all around this track, which is why yesterday was such a surprise to see one of them in the top three. But yeah, if they're on the podium today, that would be an outstanding result. And whatever driver gets that podium, yeah, that would be truly outstanding. Lewis Hamilton, by the way, I still can't believe that this stat is true. Lewis Hamilton still has not finished on the podium in 2025, excluding, of course, sprint races, which we don't count. How incredible is that? 0 podiums so far in 2025. Yeah, I honestly can't believe it. I'm quite frankly speechless regarding it. I mean, we knew kind of that Lewis Hamilton is on the back burner of his career, but to not finish on the podium this season is diabolical from him. And I know the Ferrari car's not been good enough this season, but Lewis Hamilton should have a podium this season. No doubt about it. Silverstone was obviously the race, one of the races where he absolutely should have been on the podium, but he wasn't fast enough to stop Hulkenberg from taking his first ever podium. Tower Power saying Verstappen car looking good at this circuit. Herman the Tosser says, I think we'll see a torpedo again at the first corner. I hope not, because I didn't watch the sprint, but I get the feeling that that start line, or not start line, but that first lap collision pretty much ruined the sprint because it took so many contenders in the top 10 out of action. I prefer it when we have less DNFs because you tend to get more competitive races when there's less DNFs. That's why if you go look back in history, when 30, 40 years ago in Formula One, we had regularly half the field not finishing the race. That's why a lot of those races were not competitive, because a lot of the cars that were able to fight with each other ended up not being able to even finish. So yeah, I would hope that we can get through all good. I'm hoping pretty much for a start like what we had last year. A dramatic first lap overtake for the lead. That'd be nice. Right, let's find some other comments. F1 1244 says, get ready for a masterclass from Stroll. He's about to go bowling. As I said, I saw the incident that he had with Ocon a couple hours ago. I was able to finally see the clip of that, and yeah, just such poor driving. That video I made a couple years ago now about Lance Stroll, not being good enough, and not only not being good enough, but me advocating for him, not being on the grid, still rings true to this day. In fact, it rings even truer now than it did when I made the video. And that's really why I made the video, because I knew that he would just continue to prove me right. And that's why that video will remain, obviously, on the channel. And I might even occasionally, during the winter break, pin it to my homepage as a reminder that 2 years ago I called out, you know, why Stroll is not good enough and why it will never change, because we're in the same situation with the guy right now. Anyone who thinks Lance Stroll is good enough to be in Formula One is either paid in some way by Aston Martin or is just a fucking lunatic, quite frankly. Um, Let me find some. Yeah, I was gonna say. Was it the anti-clanker in chat said, "Damn the Norris say." Never mind, I'm stupid. Ignore me. Yeah, I think you might have just tuned in at the wrong time there, thinking I was talking about Norris. No, Norris. I've got my criticisms of Lando Norris, but he's obviously one of the top few best drivers we have on the grid. There's no doubt about that. But Lance Stroll is absolutely horrendous. And I cannot wait for the day where it's announced that Stroll is no longer a Formula One racing driver, because he should have been kicked out of that team years ago. And not only that, no, forget he should have been kicked out of that team. He what do you call it? He really should not have even made it to Racing Point / Aston Martin, because after that season in Williams in 2018, where I shall remind you, he was out-qualified over the season by Sergei Sirotkin, someone who was deemed not good enough for Formula One, literally out-qualified Stroll. Stroll obviously got the chance to replace Ocon because his dad took over Racing Point, and Stroll now has a forever seat at that team until, I don't know, he physically can't do it anymore. Um, Anti-Clank saying Lance is fucking tragic, should have never made it to F1. The thing is, if you look back at his junior career, you could argue that, yeah, he probably deserved a chance in Formula One, but his Formula One career is so easy, I would say, I wouldn't call myself an analyst, but a content creator that critiques drivers and whatever in Formula One. It's so easy to pick apart his career, because the only thing defenders of him point to is, but he got good results here, good results there. But then when you actually look at the context of certain results, and also look at the context of he produces these certain results and then goes on a run of absolute diarrhea after or before those occasional good results, it it makes you realize that this guy actually is I wouldn't say a fraud. I think that's a bit extreme for me to say, even though I have used that term before wrongly on this channel. If you're wondering what I'm referencing there, I think me and Nib did a stream. When was it? It was in the early days of this channel. I think early. No, it was. I think it was December or January of like 2018/19. I did a stream and we debated whether Vettel was an all-time great, or I said in the title a fraud. I should not have put that in the title because that was crossing the line, quite frankly. As you can tell with this channel, I've learnt a lot in regards to not going over the top with certain criticisms or things like that. But with Lance Stroll, again, I'm not going to say he's a fraud, but he's as close to that as I think you can be as a Formula One driver. And yeah, I'm sick to death of seeing him in Formula One. Yanni saying Lance is the best. I just made $50. I tell you, I would not be surprised if not Lawrence himself, but I would not be surprised if Aston Martin did pay a content creator to go and make a positive video on Lance Stroll. I'm not saying that has happened. I'm not accusing any content creators in the F1 space of having done that. What I'm saying is I wouldn't be surprised if it does happen, because we see in other, in other things, politics and other, football or other sports, that, partnerships and that makes certain content creators have certain viewpoints or present certain viewpoints that are coincidentally positive of certain people or a team or something like that. So yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if something like that actually happened, even though I know obviously Yanni you were joking, but I wouldn't be surprised if something like that happens in the future. To be fair, I'm surprised it hasn't happened already, given that F1 content creators have been making videos for a few years. Anti-Clanker saying, nice, bro. I'm more of a Ferrari fan. Next year's our year. Ugh, it's so depressing, isn't it? Being a Ferrari fan. Thankfully, I am not a Ferrari fan, but I do want Ferrari to eventually break this drought. Just like I wanted McLaren to, and I'm happy that McLaren have finally done it in the last year or so. Ferrari, I really hope they do break it in the next few years, but I just don't see a way out at the moment. And what we're hearing for next year is already not positive, even though we all still don't know what's going to happen. What time is the race? The race starts at 8 p.m. UK time, so local time. I think it 2 p.m. I think it is local time. Let me look. Yeah, the race starts at 2 p.m. local time in Texas. Crystal saying Danica Tragic makes Jensen Button's weekends on Sky so much better. That's an interesting nickname for Danica. Yeah, I've seen the clips of Danica Patrick and Jensen Button trying to, well, not I wouldn't say trying to coexist, but Jensen Button trying to coexist with Danica Patrick. Thankfully, I do these streams and I don't have to listen to the waffle they come out with on Sky. Except for obviously when I don't do the occasional race or qualifying stream. That was one thing about Singapore that I just could not stand, was having to listen to Croft and Brundle as a commentary team. Martin Brundle has really got so much worse as a commentator. He's still good, but he was one of the best out there, in his prime. But now he's just a lot worse. And a lot more, leans a lot more into the British bias, than he used to. He used to be a lot more objective and fair than he is now. And I mean, on Sky, they're so obviously pro Lando. It's just, insufferable, quite frankly. I get it, British channel and everything, but you don't have to outright be, cheerleaders for him. A great example is Sky Sports. They have a dedicated tennis channel. There's some British tennis players, and they cover them extensively and, cover their matches, but they don't, when they analyze them and cover them, they're not doing what Sky F1 do, which is just making shit up and coming out with just ridiculous things to support narratives that support Lando Norris. And I mean, they did the same with Hamilton, and they do the same with Russell. And if Russell becomes a championship contender in the future, which he will, they'll do the same with him. I'm just sick to death of it, quite frankly. And that's partly why, I enjoy doing these streams, because I don't have to listen to them lot. Crystal saying Brundle on ITV 97 to 2006 was peak Brundle. Absolutely. When Lewis Hamilton came in, there was definitely a bit of a shift from the British broadcasters in terms of the way they presented their coverage. Because if you go and look at it, the way it was before Lewis Hamilton came in, even with Coulthard and Button and Damon Hill, it wasn't as obvious, obviously biased. Obviously, when Damon Hill was fighting for the championship, you still had the narratives that they would push, but it wasn't as blatant as I feel like it is now, quite frankly. But I mean, again, they still did it with Damon Hill, especially the newspapers, making out Michael Schumacher was, the worst person on earth, which, again, I've already laid out why I disagree with all of that stuff in terms of the whole Damon Hill Michael Schumacher rivalry, which is just bullshit, quite frankly. But well, we won't relitigate that topic again, because I remember, was it a few months ago, I did a right old rant about Damon Hill, because I really do not like the guy. Absolute crybaby. Good on you, Chazza. Cheers, G Walker. Good to see you, by the way. Right, let's see if I can find some other comments, as we've got, 45 minutes to go until the race is underway. As Crystal says, Leclerc 2026 Drivers' Champion. I'd be amazed if that happens, quite frankly. Honestly, for next season, I think the championship battle is going to be Mercedes versus McLaren. Because, I mean, we've already heard the rumours that Mercedes are a step ahead on the power units, and I think that will be the case next year. Obviously, the power units are the most important area of the new regulations next year. And I think it's going to be Mercedes versus McLaren, and I think the championship fight will be Russell versus Piastri versus Norris. And I think George Russell wins that fight. So if you were to nail me down to who will be the world champion next year, I think it will be George Russell. Ferrari, I think, will be in there to a degree, but I don't think they're going to win the championship. I think they might win a race or two, but they're not winning the championship. And for Red Bull, I think Red Bull are going to go backwards quite a bit. I don't think their powertrains with Ford is going to work out, at least initially. And I think next season will be Max's final year at Red Bull. I will, though, by the way, be doing some early 2026 predictions. I will probably upload that video probably right after New Year. And of course, don't take the predictions literally, because we don't even know what the performance is like between the teams, because we've not obviously had any testing. So don't take it too seriously. But yeah, I will, do my predictions for what I think 2026 is going to look like. Tracy Woodbridge says, totally agree with you regarding Damon Hill. Yeah. Never liked the guy. And Tracy says, George Russell puke, even worse. I've always said this about Russell, and I will probably always maintain this about him. As a driver, I like him a lot. As a person, he's not my cup of tea. I think that's a pretty mild way of explaining how I truly feel about Russell. There are a lot of things I don't like about him in terms of his personality, but as a driver, I think he is one of the best on the grid. And I think he's absolutely ready to win a world championship. All he needs, Russell, is a good enough car. And I think he's ready to get it done. But we'll have to see next year whether he will have a good enough car. Again, ultimately, despite certain rumours, we still don't know where people will be next season. Crystal saying foreigners don't realise us Brits tend to hate our own more than we like them. We do, and I don't think that's a good thing. It is a common thing in our society. We initially will build up certain people, but then we're desperate to bring them down when they get too successful. Look at footballers, for example, especially that golden generation we had, or the golden generation. They weren't literally a golden generation, but all them players from 20 odd years ago, the amount of hatred they all got, which most of it was unjustified. It was purely because they were successful footballers earning lots of money. And yeah, did the occasional weird thing in their private lives. Like, who cares, honestly? I mean, what a lot of these footballers get up to in their private lives is mild compared to what musicians do in their private lives. But in this country, we make it out to be such a big story. And that's the thing, when it comes to like Lewis Hamilton should be regarded as one of the greatest sportsmen this country has ever produced. But so many people in this country unjustifiably hate him because, he doesn't pay taxes, or he pushes a political movement I don't agree with, which is such a stupid baby reason to not like someone. But yeah, if Lewis Hamilton was American, America would treat him like the second coming of Christ. But in this country, we treat him like he's like a traitor or something. Again, the way our society treats successful people is disgusting, and it needs to change. But it never will, because we hate we hate when people in this country get successful because we're all miserable. That's why. And anyone who's watching this stream, if you're British, you'll know that I am absolutely bang on. We are an absolutely miserable people as Brits. And we, not only are we miserable, we fucking love our misery. We love it. We really enjoy it, I think. A lot more than we probably would let on. Anyway, enough of that. Let's get on to some other comments. I'll probably read out a few more and then post a link of the stream out one final time before we get into this race, as we've got about 40 minutes to go. Mark Ceruro, what's happening with Oscar? If you're talking about just this weekend in general, I think it's probably down to he just doesn't. Well, two things. One, he does not go well around this track. We know that. Last year he finished in I wouldn't say a distant fifth, but it was a pretty mediocre fifth place finish. The year before, he was also pretty much nowhere compared to his teammate. Lando Norris, I remember, led, I think, half of that 2023 race. Oscar was, I think, in the middle of the pack, and then he had a DNF for whatever reason. I think it was a mechanical issue, but he wasn't really in a good position anyway, despite that problem. So, yeah, you have that factor, but without a doubt, Oscar is not in his best form right now. And also, the momentum has swung against him, no doubt about it. You know, since, I wouldn't say Monza, I'd say since Baku, since that crash in qualifying, he has been just on the back foot. Even though he outqualified Norris in Singapore, then, you know, we saw what happened at the start, which obviously got on his nerves. I think rightly so, but I think he probably let it get to him a bit too much, to be honest. So, yeah. I think that's really why Oscar is sixth on the grid and why he's on the back foot a bit. But if he can today just perform better and finish in third, then I think that will give him some encouragement and confidence that he's, you know, managed to still rescue a good result from, you know, a bad qualifying result. Remember, we've had drivers win the race from outside the top three on the grid here. Here before. Max Verstappen, for example, won this race 2 years ago, I think from fifth on the grid or sixth on the grid. Not saying Piastri's going to do that now, but, you know, it's definitely doable to finish a few places higher at this track than, you know, the way you've started. This is not a circuit where your result is dictated by whatever happened in qualifying. We've seen many times as well, drivers even starting at the back of the field, that they've ended up finishing high up. Last year, I think Franco Colapinto and Liam Lawson both finished in the top 10, and they were out in like 16th and 17th. I think in qualifying last year. So, you know, in terms of today, he needs to forget about what happened yesterday, forget what happened on, you know, the sprint race, and just focus on today, and just focus purely on finishing on the podium. As long as he finishes on the podium, then he limits the damage that, you know, that will be taken from, you know, Verstappen winning most likely and Lando finishing second. Or even if Lando wins, at least he'll limit, the damage if he finishes third compared to if he finishes in P5 or even where he's starting, which is P6. Oh, let me get rid of that in the chat. Man, sure, saying love the British accent though. Cheers for that. Thankfully, I have a neutral, let's say, British accent. Yeah, I am happy with that because I do think it helps my case in certain things. If you have a really strong accent from certain parts of the country, it definitely can hurt your prospects. Not saying that's a good thing, it's not, but it absolutely does happen. But thankfully, like I said, I've got a neutral accent, even though I'm from the very far southwest uh of the UK. But I sound like I'm from London when I'm not. Crystal saying I hear a tinge of Cornish. Well, yeah, you would be correct in identifying what county I'm from. Born and bred Cornish, but I am thankful I don't have the accent because the accent is quite ugly. I personally think I love Cornwall, but yeah, I'm not a fan of the accent. It's comical, really. Um, Tracy saying heard today that Max had signed till 2028. Technically, yes, that is true. He's not signed a new contract today. He so basically, so his current contract at Red Bull is valid until the end of 2028, and he signed that. I think was it 2 or 3 years ago. I think it was 3 years ago. It was like 2020. It was like toward the end of 2022. I think is when he signed that contract. But the reason there were rumors that he was going to leave for Mercedes for next year, and there are still rumors for 2027. Personally, I think he will leave for Mercedes for 2027. The reason that's a possibility is because he does have a break clause in his contract saying that if Max or Red Bull are not in a certain position in the championship, then he is allowed to leave. Which is what I think will cause Max to go to Mercedes for 2027. Is next year, Red Bull, I think, will be more of a midfield team. Max will be fed up. He won't be in a high enough position in the championship for Red Bull to be able to keep him contractually. And Max will start negotiating with Mercedes and will join Mercedes, I think, for 2027, because Mercedes, I think, will probably have a better car and might even be world champions next year. So that's what I think is going to happen. But technically, yes, Max is under contract until the end of 2028. But if Red Bull want to keep him, then they need to make sure they stay as competitive pretty much as they are now until the end of 2028 to keep him until then. But I would be very surprised if Max is still at Red Bull in 2028. Very surprised. I think, especially if he was to win the championship this year, it would be a fitting way to pretty much conclude his Red Bull career. I think it was always unlikely that he was going to stay at Red Bull his entire career. I mean, it's unlikely with every driver, really, that you're going to stay at the same team forever. Anyway, before we go any further, let me just post the link of the stream out one final time before we go into this Grand Prix. Come join us here to watch along the US GP in Texas. And there you go. Hopefully we get some more joining us. Quickly, before we go any further, Make sure to subscribe to the channel for more content like this if you are new. And smash a like button. We're on 30 likes. Let's try and get up to 40 plus likes if we can in the next few minutes. And yeah, Chris was saying Cornwall home to some nice beaches. Some very nice beaches, but if you're a tourist to Cornwall, you'll be mainly attracted to those areas. But I can tell you now, as a Cornishman, I don't know if it's because we're used to living near beaches, but we just don't really go to them that often. Obviously, there's quite a few people in this county that do live quite close to the beach. I don't live that far away from the beach, but I rarely go because, again, when you live here, you kind of get used to it and you just take it for granted, really. So, yeah, I don't really go that often. I should go more because whenever I do, I enjoy it. But again, you take it for granted because there are so many. There's got to be at least 50 beaches in Cornwall. Nicholas, good to see you. Says, I'm looking forward to Mexico next week. And if Max Verstappen wins this race the next week, he'll definitely make F1 history. In terms of if you're a Verstappen fan, very much you should look forward to next week, because if Max can win today and next week in Mexico, which I think he probably will, if I was to predict right now who I think will win the Mexican Grand Prix, I can't look past anyone other than Max Verstappen. Then yeah, absolutely the championship is on. Looking at the final few races, even if Max wins it, it's still going to be really, really close. Max, I think, will win today. I think Max wins in Mexico. And I think in Brazil, Max will win as well. But then, after that, you've got Vegas, Qatar, and Abu Dhabi. Vegas, I think, might be a bit of a hiccup for Max and Red Bull because they've not been that strong at that circuit in the two editions we've had so far. It's been one of their weaker circuits, that Las Vegas Grand Prix. I know he won there in 2023, but that was probably one of the slowest tracks for Red Bull in 2023. And then last year, they were miles away from Mercedes, who won that race, who I think will probably be the quickest team there again. Qatar is a 50-50, really, between Max and McLaren. And Abu Dhabi, I think I'd probably favour Max. So I think out of these final 6 Grand Prix, I think Max probably wins at least 4 of these final 6. But really, he needs to win all 6. That's why it's going to be so close when we get to Abu Dhabi. And very much, I am believing that the championship will go down to the final race in Abu Dhabi, which, remember, is the weekend of December 6th and 7th. Let me see if I can find some other comments here quick. One thing I will do in a moment is I'll do a quick roundup of the teams, and I will make sure to just give a quick preview as to where I think the teams will probably finish and where they should be aiming for in this race. But I just want to read out another comment if I can before I get on to that. Tracy saying he did say that he would leave when he stopped having fun. I think he meant in general when it comes to Formula One. I think as long as he's winning and, you know, isn't, as long as he's not in a like a Alonso type situation where he's in a car miles away from where he should be, then I think he'll be in Formula One for quite a bit longer. I mean, he's been in Formula One since, what, 2015? This is his, he's 10 years in to Formula One. I think he will probably, I think definitely he'll be in Formula One for another 10 years, probably another 15, to be honest. And then what, 2040, which, scarily, we are closer to 2040 now than we are to 2010, just to make us feel even older. And that is also mental to think about, that we're closer to the year 2040. What do you call it? Yeah, in 2040, he'll be, what, 41, 42, something like that. Pretty much around about the age that Lewis Hamilton is, and Lewis obviously is about to retire probably in the next year or so. So, yeah, I think that's probably when Max realistically hangs it up, unless there's a massive change, of course, in his life, or he again gets into an Alonso-like situation where he, can't win races or get near winning races because he's in a rubbish car. But as long as he's in front-running cars, I think he easily is on the grid for another 10, maybe 15 years, which is scary for the rest of the grid, because if he wins his 5th World Championship this year and does stay around for another 10, 15 years, he could end up with 10 world titles or more. Because he is the best on the grid, and I've not seen anyone who I think could be better than him. Even George Russell, who I've said many times I think is the closest driver to Max on the grid, I still don't think Russell is as good as Verstappen. So, yeah. Let me just get rid of this other bot. As Will saying, don't say that. I think in regards to me saying that we're closer to 2040 than 2010. And yeah, I think Will also said Max will be 43 in 2040. Yeah. I mean, that's for the absolute elite top drivers. That is pretty much the age where they tend to retire. Very early 40s. So we'll see. Who knows what the future will bring. Hopefully much more exciting racing, and hopefully some different world champions, because even though Max is the best, I hope it's not just Max winning the championship every season, because obviously that'd be very boring. But as long as the car's good enough, that's probably what will happen. Anyway, let's get into my quick roundup of the teams and where I think they should be aiming for in this race, or what results they should be aiming for in this Grand Prix. For McLaren, if they can win today, it would be a massive win, especially for Lando Norris if he was to get the win today, especially if Oscar Piastri, his teammate, does not finish on the podium. As I said earlier, the only way they can win this race is really if they go a few laps longer than Verstappen on the strategy and have fresher tyres for the end, and pretty much do what they did last year, which allowed them to fight Verstappen, but this time Lando would have to make a clean, successful overtake. Can he do that this time? We'll have to see. But that's the only chance they've got. Second is looking likely, unfortunately, for Lando. For Oscar, if he can get on the podium, it would be a great recovery from what's been a pretty poor weekend. For Red Bull and Max, it is simple what the task is. It is to win the United States Grand Prix, something they have done quite often in recent history. Red Bull obviously won the race here in 2021, 2022, and 2023, all with Max Verstappen. Can he do it today? I think he will. I think the car is good enough, and he in that car is just a combination that is too good to stop. Yeah, Verstappen, I think, takes the race win relatively comfortably ahead of the rest. If Ferrari can finish on the podium today, that would be an absolutely fantastic result. But realistically, I don't see it happening, because I don't think legitimately they do have a fast enough car to do it. They're going to have to rely on either a bit of luck or one of their drivers really producing a brilliant performance like Leclerc did in qualifying. Let's see what they can do, but a podium, possible but unlikely. For Mercedes, I think their aim today has to be a podium. If they get a podium, I think that'd be a pretty good result. If Russell, though, can get up a position on the start, maybe might be able to feature in that battle for the win. Again, depends on how close he can keep to Norris and Verstappen, but the start is very important in determining what Russell can do today. But a podium would be a good result. Aston Martin are quicker than what their grid position suggests. They really should have been 8th on the grid. Alonso, we know, is so good around this circuit. I think he finishes in the points easily. We'll see what Lance Stroll can do from 19th. But yeah, they should get at least a couple points today. Alpine had a slightly better qualifying than what we expected. But realistically, I don't see them in the points today. Even though Franco Colapinto finished in the points last year with a brilliant performance from, I think, even lower on the grid than he was or than he is today. Again, realistically, I don't think the Alpine is quick enough. For Haas, obviously, they've got a car in the top 8 at their home Grand Prix, one of their home Grand Prix. Oliver Behrman, what a performance from him yesterday. Can he keep that up today? Honestly, as long as he finishes in the points, I think that's a good enough result. We were not expecting Haas to be in the top 10 this weekend, especially after not only the sprint qualifying, but the sprint race as well. There was not an expectation that Behrman was going to be a top 10 runner. So as long as he finishes in the top 10, that's good enough. For Racing Bulls, Lawson 12th on the grid. Keep an eye out for him. He also finished in the points at this Grand Prix last year from low down on the grid. A lot lower down on the grid than he is today. So keep your eye on Lawson. And I think in 2023, he also finished in the points here. So this is one of his strongest circuits. So keep your eye on Liam Lawson, who, remember, is still fighting for his Formula One future against Yuki Tsunoda in terms of who will be at Racing Bulls next year. For Isaac Hadjar, he starts at the back. He did actually finish in the points at Monza after starting at pretty much the back. Can he replicate that today? It'd be amazing if he did. For Williams, I think they'll be the strongest midfield team. I think they do have the best midfield car. Carlos Sainz is on his best form, which is good to see. I think he finishes in the top 8. Alex Albon, keep your eye on him. He has many times finished in the points from low down grid positions and definitely has a much faster car than where he is on the grid, which is 18th. And Sauber were very quick in sprint qualifying, but then dropped off the pace quite a bit in actual qualifying. Can they pick it up today and actually get in the points? Nico Hülkenberg, by the way, is pretty good around this circuit. He is finishing the points here quite a few times. So keep your eye on Hülkenberg in 11th. But in terms of my race prediction, here it is. I think Max Verstappen takes the win. Lando Norris finishes in 2nd, with Russell 3rd, and then Leclerc, Piastri, Hamilton, Antonelli, Sainz, Alonso, and Behrman completing your top 10. And if this result was to happen, then Max Verstappen would be only 40 points behind in the championship going into the next Grand Prix. Lando Norris would be only 14 points behind Piastri as well going into the Mexico City Grand Prix. So if this result does happen, then it is really tightening up nicely ahead of the final 5 races after today. But we have got, guys, about 15 minutes to go until lights out in Austin. So get in your final comments and predictions. Make sure to vote in the poll at the top of the chat if you have not, as we are not far away from the start of a crucial race. And if there is a collision at the start, especially at the front, however it plays out could be championship deciding. As they're just going through the national anthem on the starting grid. And then once they're done with this, the race will be underway. Right, let's see if I can find some other comments if I can, as we've not got long left. The poll, by the way, if you haven't voted in it, the poll will keep running for another probably 5 minutes or so, as during this national anthem, they're doing the usual parade of absolutely everything, which is the most American thing possible. Surprised there wasn't a nuclear blast level of fireworks to accompany the Star Spangled Banner. Crystal saying you could build a 46-year-old Kimi a car half a second faster than McLaren and he could have a world championship chance. Unreal. Yeah, you could. The McLaren drivers have not been absolutely amazing this season. Lando has been better, I think, as the season has gone on. Piastri, I think Piastri has had a very good season, but I wouldn't say it's been an amazing season necessarily performance-wise. I think you could argue that he should be further clear of Lando than he is. But at the end of the day, my opinion is irrelevant. All that matters now is winning the championship and doing enough to win the championship, whatever enough is. Because if Oscar Piastri doesn't win another race this season and wins the championship and even has less wins than Norris or Verstappen and ends up winning the championship, people won't really care about that, you know, when they look back at this season. All they'll care about is Oscar Piastri was the world champion. How you get the job done, as long as you don't break the rules, is irrelevant. So that's all that matters. As they're showing replays on Sky F1 of starts up to turn 1 in the past, and they just showed what happened last year, where Lando left the door wide open for Max to dive bomb, which is why Lando didn't finish on the podium last year, was because of that start. He threw it away, which he did multiple times last year, and he's done at times this year as well. But the start of races here have been pretty manic in the past, and hopefully it will be again, just without any, collisions. By the way, hello to Super Kev, who says getting depressed with that McLaren team. Let's see if there's any other comments that I've missed. And don't think so. No, don't think so. But if you've got any final predictions, again, make sure to post them in the chat, as we're not far away now from getting underway. Only 10 more minutes. And as G Walker says, hang in there, Kev, with McLaren. And yeah, McLaren, not exactly the best run team. And what do you call it? As I just saw Joe Rogan on the grid there with Matthew McConaughey. I don't think I pronounced his last name quite correctly, but you know exactly who I'm on about. Yeah, McLaren not the best run team when it comes to the driver relationship, and they have really messed around with that too much this season. But I just hope it doesn't play a big role in who wins the championship, because if it does, then it might really, destroy that team. Right, let me see. Let me scroll up a bit further, see if I missed any other comments. Crystal earlier saying Lando, Goat Norris, he would destroy Alonso. Alonso's Mange share from earlier says Alonso said Stroll has the talent to be world champion. I would say that probably as well if I was getting paid millions, tens of millions by a Canadian billionaire who just so happens to be the father of said driver. There is absolutely no chance in hell that Alonso actually believes that. But anyway, let me finish up the poll in the chat. Nearly 200 votes. Cheers for voting as usual, guys. And yeah, 193 votes. And I asked you guys who will win the United States Grand Prix today. And 71% of you have gone for Max Verstappen. I have to agree. And I think with the form he's in and how good he is in general, how do you stop him? We'll see if anyone can do it today, though. 14% think Norris will win, 11% think Leclerc will win, and only 4% think George Russell will win. Of course, George Russell won the last Grand Prix in Singapore. McLaren, remember, have not won a Grand Prix since Zandvoort, which feels not that long ago, but it was about, I think, just under 2 months ago. Monza, Red Bull and Max won. Obviously, Red Bull and Max won again in Baku, and then Russell and Mercedes won in Singapore. It's the longest McLaren have gone without winning a race since, I think, last year. And I think around this time last year as well. This year they've been, up until these last 3 races or so, they've been pretty strong at winning race after race after race, and especially right before the summer break, they were banging in the 1-2s, but that's not been the case lately. As KH, good to see you, says, hopefully Sainz does great today. He could. If he gets a decent start, that Williams, pretty decent race pace, might push him into a fight for a good amount of points in this Grand Prix. Will saying Nibbler having a very frustrating weekend. Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if he's gone back to sleep, to be honest. I know it's very early in the morning where he's at in Melbourne, but yeah, obviously his football team has lost in the worst game to lose, and obviously not looking good on the F1 front. But again, Piastri can still rescue his championship quite a bit today. Actually, I wouldn't say rescue is the right word, because we have to remember Oscar is still leading the championship by 22 points, which is a relatively comfortable lead to have. So as long as, Piastri finishes on the podium and Lando doesn't win, Oscar is still in a pretty decent position. We have to remember that. Doesn't feel like Piastri's leading the championship at the minute, but he is. And as long as he's leading it at the end of the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix, that's all that matters. Robert Saltzman says, sounds like audience capture, Chazza. If you had a different opinion, would you tell 71% of your audience? I don't quite know what you're on about there. I think Max is going to win the race today, regardless of what anyone else thinks. I'm not saying that to garner respect or viewers. I've never done that. So, yeah, I don't quite know what you're on about there. Anyway, let's get into a final couple important details before this crucial race in Austin. Here is the Drivers' Championship. Oscar Piastri, 22 points clear going into this race. Max Verstappen is 55 points behind. Can he take a big chunk of points out of Piastri's lead today? Russell in fourth. Russell, interestingly, is under 100 points off the lead. May even take a few points out of Piastri again today. Charles Leclerc fifth. Lewis Hamilton sixth. Antonelli seventh. Albon eighth. Isaac Hadjar ninth. And Carlos Sainz is now in the top 10 of the championship. On the constructors' side, McLaren are constructors' champions for a second year running. Mercedes are in second, only 26 points clear of Ferrari. And Red Bull now on 300 points after their sprint win. Red Bull could very well be in the top 3 of the constructors' championship at the end of today's race. Williams in 5th, Racing Bulls in 6th, only 4 points clear of Aston Martin. Can Aston Martin get level on points or go ahead of Racing Bulls today? We'll see. Sauber in 8th. Haas need a few points today if they're to get a crucial 8th place for them in the championship. And Alpine still last, and they will very likely still finish in last. Let's go on to, though, some key stats regarding the front-running teams. McLaren, their last win here at COTA was in 2012 with Lewis Hamilton. That was, of course, the first ever Grand Prix at this Circuit of the Americas track in Austin. And that is their only win at this circuit. Last year, they were not even on the podium. Can they at least get that and maybe take their second win in Austin? Red Bull have been pretty successful here as of late. Their last win here in Austin was 2 years ago with Max Verstappen, and they've took 3 wins in the last 10 years. 3 of those wins since 2021. 3rd and 7th it was last year. It was a disappointing race given how they looked in the weekend previous. But can they go one better today and win the Grand Prix? Ferrari, of course, dominantly won this race last year. Leclerc was the one who took the win. Ferrari have had a couple wins in the last 10 years here in Austin. Kimi Raikkonen obviously taking his final Grand Prix win in 2018. And yeah, last year, 1st and 2nd for Ferrari. I would be amazed if they took that today. And for Mercedes, their last win in Austin was 6 years ago with Valtteri Bottas. That was also the weekend where Lewis Hamilton won his 6th World Championship. They've been the most successful team at this track in the last 10 years. 4 wins since 2015. Last year, though, 6th and a DNF. Couldn't even get in the top 5. Surely they could do better than that today. But finally, guys, let's get into your starting grid for the US Grand Prix. On the front row, roles reversed compared to last year. It's Max on pole and Norris second. On the second row, Charles Leclerc, the winner of last year's race, and George Russell in 4th. On the third row, Lewis Hamilton has won this race many times, and the championship leader, Oscar Piastri, in 6th. On the 4th row, kids, pretty much, and teammates in Formula 2 last year, Kimi Antonelli and Oliver Bearman. And then completing the top 10, the 2 Spaniards, Carlos Sainz and Fernando Alonso. Just outside of the top 10, Nico Hulkenberg and Liam Lawson. 13th and 14th, good friends, Yuki Tsunoda and Pierre Gasly. 15th and 16th, Franco Colapinto and Gabriel Bortoleto. On the penultimate row, Ocon and Albon. And on the back row, Lance Stroll and Isaac Hadjar. as the formation lap begins right now. I'm not sure who is on what tyre. So, yeah. And, well, they've just revealed it. Everyone is on the medium except Leclerc, who's on the soft, Bortoletto on the soft, Ocon on the hard, Albon on the hard, Stroll on the soft, and Hadjar on the hard. So I need to update the tyre graphics quickly. I assumed they would all start on the soft for some reason, because I thought if they were going to use a different tyre, it would be that. But, yeah. So let me update this. By the time I get this updated, the race should be underway, as Max has already took the pack to the back straight. And he's weaving around, warming up the tyres. Max has only started on pole here in Austin once before, and that was in 2021. And he did lose the lead to Lewis Hamilton on that occasion into the first corner, but through an undercut, he got back into the lead, and then just about, in what was a brilliant race, held on for a crucial win in his season. And then, yeah, Ocon and Albon on the hard, and Hadjar as well. So only 3 drivers on the hard tyre and 3 on the soft tyre, and then everyone else on the medium. So Leclerc, the highest placed driver, who is not on the medium tyre. Everyone in the top 15 on the medium except for Charles Leclerc. So Ferrari are going for it, and I can't blame them. I think they know that they haven't quite got the pace, so they're trying something different. And maybe Leclerc is going to go for a 2-stop race. And if they were to try that again, I don't blame them. As the front 5 cars now on to the start-finish straight as they do their final burnouts. And Max now lines up on pole, and he's got his car slightly pointed towards Lando Norris. Of course, that is the main objective for Max, is cover off Norris, defend the lead. The inside line is the best line to have into the first corner, and second place is what has the inside line, which is what makes the starts here so interesting. Stroll and Hadjar, final 2 cars on the grid, just coming through the final corner, and will be the final cars to line up on the grid. If Max Verstappen's going to win his 5th World Championship, victory today is an imperative. Can he do it? We're about to find out. As the green flag waves, and we have got the lights on. It's 3, 4, 5 lights. And it's go in Austin. And Max Verstappen gets a great start. Covers the inside. And Leclerc has had a good start. He's going to go right round the outside of Lando Norris. Does he get the move done? He's side by side. Yes, he does. Brilliant start by Leclerc. Brilliant start by Piastri, who's up to 5th as Leclerc. I thought was going to send it on Verstappen, but he backed out, thankfully, of that move, because if he went for it, that would have been a big crash. As Hamilton going for Norris. Both Ferraris going for it. Great to see. As we've got Tsunoda there in the background trying to overtake someone. And I think Albon side by side with Hadjar at the back. But it is Verstappen in the lead from Leclerc, Norris, Hamilton, and then I think Piastri 5th, Russell 6th, Antonelli in 7th. And then Alonso, I think, is in 8th place. Oh, no. It's Oliver Behrman overtaking Antonelli, or trying to, down to turn 12. Antonelli holds the inside line. As Tsunoda's had a brilliant start. Tsunoda is up to P10 on this first lap. As yellow flag. might be for some debris. I can't see anyone having gone off the track or anything. Yep, it's Albon, who I think's gone off, but he's come back on. He's all good. As they all come through and begin lap 2 of 56. Max Verstappen leads by about a second from Leclerc. Norris, Hamilton, Piastri, Russell, Antonelli, Behrman, Sainz, Tsunoda, and then the rest of the field as Russell trying to overtake Piastri into turn 1, tries to do the switchback, but Piastri covers it off well. And then the rest of the order is Hülkenberg 11th, Alonso 12th, and then Lawson, Gasly, Bortoleto, Ocon, Colapinto, Stroll, Hadjar, and Albon. So I'll just update who's on what tyre. As Verstappen already a second and a half clear of Leclerc. This is perfect for Max Verstappen. This is exactly what he needed. A car in between him and Norris, because Leclerc is on the worst tyre, really, for the race. And that is going to allow Leclerc to hold Norris up and allow Max to run away. As side by side into turn 12, Behrman and Sainz. Behrman keeps it together, as Behrman had to go on the defensive there. Obviously, DRS already enabled. As Max is nearly 2 seconds clear of Sainz up the inside of turn 15. Brilliant move. Carlos Sainz up to 8. That is a crucial move for his race. He's now at the head of the midfield pack and can maybe hang on to the back of the Mercedes car of Antonelli as we begin lap 3. And Verstappen 1.7 clear. He is incredibly quick, as Russell still right up behind Piastri. Piastri, though, has got DRS from Hamilton. Hamilton's got DRS on Norris, and Norris has got DRS on Leclerc. So a train already forming behind Leclerc. As Tsunoda passes Behrman. Tsunoda is absolutely on it here at the start. He's up to 9th. As Colapinto has overtaken Ocon. He's into 16th. Colapinto not having a great start, unfortunately, for him. Let me just update that Bortoleto is on the soft tyre. And then you've got Colapinto on the medium. And then Stroll on the soft. And then Hadjar and Albon at the back on the hard. As Norris tries to overtake Leclerc at turn 12. Leclerc defends the inside and keeps the inside line into turn 13. Can Norris maybe go for it at turn 15? No, not had good enough traction. But this is, again, even better news for Max, because Leclerc having to go all over the place to defend, and that's giving away so much time to Verstappen ahead. Verstappen is going to be 2.5 seconds clear of Leclerc after 3 completed laps. There's no further investigation for the collision between Albon and Bortoleto at turn 12, so that's what caused Albon to go to the back. Lap 4, and yeah, already clearly a train forming behind Leclerc, and Leclerc, because he's on the soft tyre, that's going to not just hurt his race, but hurt the race of the cars behind him even more as they get stuck behind. As Carlos Sainz, by the way, still hanging on to the back of Antonelli. Good to see. As it all just about settles down for now, as Lance Stroll has overtaken Ocon. Stroll, obviously, on the soft compound tyre. So let me just update that. As on lap 4, Lando Norris gets a good exit from turn 11 right before the back straight, and he's going to be right on Leclerc down to turn 12. Leclerc defends to the inside. Lando puts his car to the outside. That McLaren just isn't quick enough down the straight to get it done into the braking zone, and that is what is keeping Leclerc ahead. Lando, though, has way more grip than that Ferrari. as Lando tries to do the switchback of dreams on the exit of turn 15, but is unable to do so. Max is now 3 seconds clear of Leclerc. As we are now on lap 5 of 56. And with every lap that Lando doesn't overtake, he's losing the chance to be able to win this race. As Lando goes for the outside line, now tries to do a switchback on the exit of turn 1, but he doesn't actually gain anything from doing that. Interestingly, Lewis Hamilton right on the back of Norris as well, so the Ferrari of Hamilton on the medium looks good, but Leclerc on the soft does not. So I'd imagine if Norris gets past Leclerc, then Leclerc will probably be told to let Hamilton through. Piastri, though, in 5th, has dropped. He's now 1.3 seconds behind Hamilton, so not looking good for Piastri. Carlos Sainz, by the way, has got DRS on Antonelli, and Antonelli has DRS on Russell, so Carlos Sainz keeping up really well with the Mercedes. Williams look like they've legitimately got the pace, as Norris almost forced Leclerc into defending his position. But Leclerc was able to keep enough on the racing line that he didn't have to move off it. As Carlos Sainz, by the way, is right on Antonelli's gearbox. Only 3/10 behind him. That Williams looks like it is possibly quicker at this stage than the Mercedes cars. As Leclerc has actually gone quicker on this lap than Verstappen. He's brought the gap down to about 3 seconds when it was 2 or 3/10 higher than that. But on lap 6, Verstappen leads by 3 seconds from Leclerc, Norris, Hamilton, Piastri, Russell, Antonelli, Sainz, Tsunoda, and Behrman. And Norris feels like he's dropping back to a degree from Leclerc. This is not good if you're Lando Norris. Saying that, Leclerc is actually catching Verstappen now. So either Max is massively backing off to save his tyres, or the soft tyres have gone through some sort of graining phase and are now working a lot better. I'd say it's more likely that Max is super conserving his tyres because Leclerc's in second and knows he can get away with it. But yeah, Norris and Hamilton have dropped back a bit from Leclerc. Sainz, we need to be looking at him. And no, we're going to see a replay of the start. Sainz is about to overtake Antonelli for 7th. Great race direction once again. But anyway, here's a replay of the start. Max did what Lando didn't do last year. Covered the inside line. Lando got a bit held up by that. Right up behind Max. And Leclerc just went right round the outside of him. Leclerc mugging Norris off 2 years in a row at the first corner. I think that's Antonelli off at turn 15. And I told you Sainz was about to overtake him. It looks like they've had contact. But we're still looking at a replay of the start when we should be looking at whatever has happened with Antonelli. Again, superb race direction, F1 TV. And yeah, Verstappen. Oh, Verstappen very nearly. Well, I think George Russell might have actually touched the back of him, and Carlos Sainz has pulled over and stopped. So clearly, they have had contact, and Sainz is out of this race. Again, we could have seen this live, but they wanted to show the start. And we've got a yellow flag. That's going to be a virtual safety car, I think. He is right next to a gap in the wall, but I think they're going to need a virtual safety car to clear that. So Sainz is out of the race, and yet virtual safety car. So Sainz is out. What a shame. He was looking so quick. And Antonelli is 19th. So Tsunoda is now 7th for Red Bull. What a race he is having. So let me just let's see a replay quickly. So into turn 15, Sainz goes for the inside line, and Antonelli turns in, and then contact is made. I think that's probably Carlos Sainz's fault. I don't think Sainz had enough of his car alongside to really go for that move. And Antonelli, this will be better from Sainz's on board. So goes for the inside line. And yeah, he wasn't far enough alongside to get that move done. He says Antonelli turned into him, but it's a left-hander. Antonelli has to turn left eventually. Antonelli did leave a bit of space on the inside. So yeah, that's Sainz's fault. Wouldn't be surprised if he gets a grid penalty for that. And that's a shame, because like I said, he was so quick. He was right on the back of the Mercedes cars. Really would have loved to have seen how his race would have developed. Thankfully, it's only a virtual safety car. The race is not going to be ruined by a full safety car and early pit stops. As Alex Albon is pitting to get on a set of medium tyres. Obviously, he was at the back, so he has to try something. As they've noted the collision between Antonelli and Sainz. There is a replay of Albon and Bortoletto's collision. And Albon, I think, simply just went a slight bit too deep into the corner and tagged the rear left tyre of Bortoletto. Nothing Bortoletto could have done about that. So both Williams drivers in the wars. So Sainz is out of the race on lap 8. And Bortoletto is now up to 13th. He's the second highest placed runner on the soft tyre. Then you've got Colapinto on the medium, Stroll on the soft, Ocon on the hard, Hadjar on the hard. Antonelli hasn't pitted. He's on the medium. I hope his car's not too damaged, but I think it probably will be. And then Albon now is on the medium compound tyre. Albon, though, don't count him out, because he's what that virtual safety car has allowed is for him to have a free pit stop and not lose as much time as he would have if it was green flag. As we begin lap 9 and we're about to go green. And well, we haven't gone green quite yet. There you go. And Leclerc has left Lando Norris in the dust a bit. Bit of a gap between the two. But the top 10, because of that collision, it's now Verstappen leading from Leclerc, gap about 2.7 seconds. And then it's Norris 3rd, Hamilton 4th, Piastri 5th, Russell 6th, Tsunoda 7th, Behrman 8th, Hülkenberg 9th, Alonso 10th. As Antonelli, by the way, looks okay. He is catching Hadjar pretty quickly. As no further investigation for Ocon for jumping the start. But yeah, Antonelli is catching Hadjar pretty quickly, so it looks like Antonelli's car's okay. So Antonelli might still be able to get a point or two from this race. Hopefully he can. As I think they just did no further action for the Antonelli Sainz thing, which I'm surprised about. As we're looking at Lewis Hamilton, about a second, just over a second behind Lando Norris. As we are now on lap 10 of 56. And yeah, Max Verstappen still leading by about 2.7 seconds. Lando Norris has dropped nearly 2 seconds behind Leclerc. Max is about, or almost, 5 seconds clear of Norris. Lando Norris has got to keep the gap between him and Verstappen at no more than 5 seconds. Currently 4.5 seconds. If he can keep the gap at this, at worst, then Lando is still in play. If he goes, a few laps longer with his first stint. As Piastri says, concerned about the left front, doesn't look or feel great. Piastri, I've got to say, it's not had a good race, really, so far. He decent start, but he's been under pressure from Russell behind, and he still is to a degree. Yeah, it looks like it's properly settled down now, as Kimi Antonelli now does a fastest lap, 1:38.8, which is quite interesting. Antonelli, remember, is not pitted. As Lando Norris is slowly, I think, catching back up to Leclerc by a tenth or so here and there. As Max keeping the gap to Leclerc at about 3 seconds on lap 11. As they're telling Lando, from what we've seen, it looks like Plan B. Plan B, I would say, is run longer with the first stint. So instead of pitting on lap 20, pit on lap 26, 27-ish. That's what I interpret Plan B to be, and that's what they have to do if they're going to try and fight the Verstappen for the win. Because at the minute, they are nearly 5 seconds behind, and if they copy Max on strategy, they're just going to end up finishing behind him. As Lance Stroll is trying to overtake Franco Colapinto, we saw, but Colapinto has stayed ahead. Colapinto in 14th. Gasly up in 12th. Alpine having a decent race. Obviously, that collision between Antonelli and Sainz has helped their predicament to a degree. As Antonelli is very quickly catching Hadjar. He's going to be past Hadjar probably in the next 5 laps. So yeah, I think Antonelli probably will finish in the points because his pace is very strong. Even stronger now than it was before the collision. As Lando Norris has got the gap down to Leclerc from 1.9 to about 1.6. Like I said, Lando is bringing it back. And remember, Leclerc, now on lap 12, 3.3 seconds, he is Leclerc behind Verstappen. Those soft tyres, as the pit window for the soft tyres now opens, those soft tyres will start to really degrade now, especially compared to those mediums. Will Leclerc, though, go as long as he can on that tyre, or will he commit to a 2-stop strategy? That's what we're going to find out in these next few laps. As we're looking at Gasly within a second of Lawson. Gasly having a very good race. He's not that far away. He's only a couple seconds away from a point at the minute, which is the closest Alpine have been to a point in a while. As Max out front has got the gap up to 3.5 seconds. Lando Norris now only 1.2 behind Leclerc. So yeah, Lando is going to have another go at Leclerc in these next 2 or 3 laps. He's catching quickly, as that is a replay of Stroll passing Colapinto on the soft tyres. The soft tyres working well for Stroll. He's still making moves out there. So Lance Stroll is up to 14th on the soft compound. And Colapinto down to 15th. As Max Verstappen has got the gap up to pretty much 4 seconds. Yeah, it is now 4 seconds between him and Leclerc. And he just needs to keep pushing Max and get that gap up even higher, and then he'll have his race pretty much bought and paid for. For Lando Norris, if Leclerc keeps dropping time like this to Max, Lando has got to overtake Leclerc really in the next 2 or 3 laps. If he keeps staying behind Leclerc for another few laps, it is going to destroy any chance of Lando possibly coming back at Max by going longer. Because if you drop too far back, then even if you go longer and have fresher tyres, you won't then have the time to catch up by the end of the race. So these are crucial laps for Lando Norris, who is still catching Leclerc, but he doesn't have a DRS on this occasion. As Piastri, by the way, has dropped 3.5 seconds behind Hamilton. Piastri about 6.5 seconds, I think, behind Lando Norris. He really is slow, Piastri, and he's still got Russell right on his tail, only 1.3 behind him. As Lando just creeping within a second now of Leclerc. As Russell saying on the radio, Piastri seems slow, and the Mercedes responding saying we think he's struggling with the front left. Maybe I think Mercedes might need to go for an undercut soon to get themselves properly in the fight for the podium, because they're a bit too far away at the minute. As Lando now does have DRS. He had it down the pit straight and he gained him a couple tenths, but now he's right in the wheel tracks of the Monegasque, who of course won this race a year ago. He's driving so well, Leclerc, on, again, tyres that are wearing out a lot more than the cars around him, and holding his own in second. And he's saying on the radio, track limits for Norris. He's fighting every corner. As Norris gets a brilliant exit from turn 11, gained about a tenth on Leclerc just on the exit. So clearly the rear tyres of that Ferrari giving away. Not close enough to overtake into turn 12, but he's going to close in a lot. And yeah, under braking, that McLaren is so much better right now than the Ferrari. And he's definitely going to have a go at Leclerc in these next couple laps, as Max nearly 5 seconds clear of Leclerc. Remember I said Norris needs to keep Max within 5 seconds of him. So that's why Lando has got to overtake Leclerc in these next lap or so, to keep Max within sight and to keep his chances of a race win alive on lap 15. As Norris yet again gets a good exit from turn 1. Antonelli, by the way, in 18th, is about to overtake Isaac Hadjar. He's finally caught up to him. As Bortoletto on the soft tyre pits. So the first of the soft tyre runners to make a pit stop, which is about right. As Leclerc struggles to get the power down out of turn 11, and his exit is not great. And I think Lando's going to have a right go at him into turn 12. Here he comes. Leclerc defends to the inside, but Lando just doesn't have enough momentum to try the outside, but he gets a great switch back. Leclerc all over the curb. Will Lando go right around the outside? He tries it. And he's going to try a switchback on the exit of turn 15. But he doesn't get a good exit. Too much wheel spin from Norris. And Leclerc stays ahead. As Bortoletto has come out on the medium tyre, which tells me that Bortoletto is on a 2-stop strategy, because I don't think the medium's going to do another 40 laps. Lap 16, Max is now 6.3 seconds clear of Leclerc. Norris has got to get this move done to save his race. But he's not going to have another chance overtaking Leclerc until the back straight. Let me just update who's on what compound. That's Lance Stroll out to 13th on the soft tyre, as Antonelli is about to overtake Hadjar. And I may as well update that Antonelli is ahead because he's literally about to do the move. As Leclerc managed to pull away a bit from Norris in that first sector, the gap up to 9/10. So Norris losing a crucial amount of time. Lando now about 7 seconds behind Verstappen. And at this point, I think Lando's race is really destroyed. Even if he goes a few laps longer than Max, he's too far behind at this point to make that work. He needs to get this overtake done and start closing in on Max, because Max has really got the lead he needs to protect himself, not only against an undercut, but an overcut situation as well, where someone goes longer than him and has fresher tyres later and overtakes him that way. Lap 17, Max Verstappen is about 7 seconds clear of Leclerc. Lando Norris about 6 tenths behind Leclerc. Lewis Hamilton, by the way, starting to gain on this Leclerc-Norris fight. Antonelli is actually still behind Hadjar, but he will get the move done in a moment. I'm sure of it. That's up to turn 1. Surely Antonelli's going to send it. And he tries to. But Isaac Hadjar stays ahead. So, still can't get up to 16th, even though he will do so in a moment. As Lando Norris, a bit closer on this occasion, but not close enough to force Leclerc into a defence. And Leclerc is absolutely helping Verstappen a treat. He is pretty much guaranteeing victory for Verstappen and holding off any possibilities from behind. As the gap now just over 7 seconds, as Antonelli is now going to overtake Hadjar into turn 12. So there you go. Antonelli now up to 16th officially. Esteban Ocon only about a second and a half up the road. So Antonelli will be in 15th probably pretty soon. Lap 18. Norris up to turn 1. Still not close enough to overtake Leclerc. He gets the good exit, though, from turn 1. He's closer on this occasion, but can he keep close enough through this first sector where it is very difficult to follow? Even on better tyres, it's difficult to follow. As Oscar Piastri, by the way, 4.2 seconds behind Lewis Hamilton. Piastri is nearly 7 seconds behind his teammate. So Piastri is not in the same race as his teammate. Piastri at this point is fighting for where he is, 5th place. As it stands, Max is going to gain 15 points on Piastri, which will put the gap down to 40 points going into the final 5 races, where Max will still have to gain pretty much 10 points per race if he is to overcome Piastri and win the championship. Leclerc was able to stay ahead. Gap, though, is nearly up to 8 seconds. Max is nearly a second a lap quicker now than Leclerc and Norris, who are fighting. And I think this is an example, this battle, of something we have criticised Lando Norris for, his lack of racecraft. And we saw it at this Grand Prix last year. How many times did he attempt to overtake Verstappen and fail to do so? It's something that he just isn't as good as others at, your Leclerc's, your Piastri's even, Verstappen. He is not the best racecraft-wise. Saying that, we have occasionally seen some great overtakes from him, so we know it's possible. It's just consistently doing it is the issue. As on the exit of turn 11, he's got a good exit this time. This is the closest, I think, just about he's been. Down the back straight. If you don't get it done this time, he ain't never going to get it done. Leclerc defends heavily to the inside. Norris forces him into a hard defense, but he doesn't quite get a good enough switch back as Leclerc moves there and blocks off Norris to the outside of turn 14. Norris is probably going to moan about that, but I think that was just about okay. Leclerc getting desperate in defense, but he has to. As the gap now nearly 9 seconds between Max and Leclerc. Red Bull on the pit wall will be absolutely loving this on lap 20, as now the pit window for the medium tyre opens. And Max Verstappen at this point has got this race won, because even if Lando overtakes, he's still got a long gap to catch. Lando is now nearly 10 seconds behind Verstappen. And, well, if Max was actually to pit, Max would come out, I think, in between his teammate and Behrman in 7th place. So they'll probably be thinking about a pit stop soon for Max. But as long as Leclerc stays ahead of Norris, there's no reason to pit Verstappen. Absolutely no reason to pit Verstappen. As Lance Stroll has just overtaken Pierre Gasly for 12th place. Stroll, again, his soft tyres are still working well on lap 20. As Norris tries to get close to Leclerc into the braking zone of turn 12, but Leclerc brilliantly it has defended here. And it might not result in Leclerc finishing in 2nd place in the end, but he is putting up a worthy defense. And you've got to say Ferrari at this point in this race look like they're pretty likely to finish on the podium, but who will it be? As Lewis Hamilton is right in there. Hamilton only just over a second behind Norris on lap 21. As Antonelli has overtaken Esteban Ocon. So Antonelli 15th now. Antonelli has not pitted yet, remember, after that collision earlier. So, there you go. As black and white flag for Lando Norris for track limits. So Leclerc was right, as Leclerc did not have a good exit from turn 9. And that's put him right on the back foot as Norris gets a good exit. And he's even closer now than he was a couple laps ago. If he doesn't get it done this time, then he might as well give up. As he goes around the outside, he's got the DRS. Has he got the line? Yes, he does. Finally, Lando Norris is up to 2nd, but I'm afraid it's too little too late, as he's about 10 seconds now behind Verstappen. Being behind Leclerc for that long has completely destroyed his race. And there is no way that Norris can win this now unless he gets some really good fortune. If I was Ferrari, I'd pit Leclerc right now, but no, they're not going to. Leclerc actually still close enough to get DRS from the back of Norris. But yeah, they've got to pit Leclerc very soon because those soft tyres are really suffering at this point. So Leclerc down to third. Third and fourth for Ferrari on lap 22. We're nearly halfway through this US Grand Prix. As Max Verstappen continuing to pull away from Norris, nearly 11 seconds clear. Norris, I think, may have just damaged his tyres a bit too much following Leclerc. As Max, if Max was to pit now, he would come out in between Russell and Tsunoda. Max has been about a second a lap quicker than Tsunoda in this race, which has allowed him to have a gap at the minute. As Alex Albon overtakes, does he? Isaac Hadjar, not quite. They're side by side. And now he does. As Lewis Hamilton tries to overtake Leclerc. Can he get the move done? I really don't know what Ferrari are doing here. They need to tell Leclerc to let Hamilton through. He's on much better tyres. This is absolutely pointless, what they're doing. They've got to pit Leclerc. His tyres are quite clearly finished. As Leclerc, it's been told to box. They've lost nearly 3 seconds to Norris. That was so stupid from Ferrari. And this is how it's going to destroy Norris's race, because now Leclerc pits. Norris will probably have to cover this pit stop off in a lap or two, which will prevent him from being able to go longer than Verstappen out front. So Leclerc has pitted. Albon obviously is ahead of Hadjar. Leclerc comes out in 9th place. On lap 23. So the top 11 now are on the medium compound tyres. And someone else has just pitted. Have they? No, I was wrong. Well, no, one thing I need to update is that Albon is on the medium and Hadjar on the hard. Hadjar has gone absolutely nowhere in this race. There's Lewis Hamilton here, going quite wide through turn 13. Hamilton now 3 seconds behind Lando Norris. Because Leclerc's just pitted, though, that puts Hamilton at a disadvantage compared to his teammate, because Leclerc now has fresher tyres and will now gain quite a bit of time. But then Hamilton will have fresher tyres later. As here is Antonelli down the inside of Colapinto and gets the move done. So Antonelli is up to 14th place, as Max Verstappen, by the way, is 10.8 clear out front of Norris. So Max has got this race won. It's just a matter of who finishes on the other 2 podium spots. And that battle is between, by the looks of it, Norris, Hamilton, and Leclerc. Piastri has gained about a second on Hamilton in the last few laps. But I wouldn't quite say Piastri's in the fight for the podium, because he's been really fighting Russell behind. Russell, though, now 2.5 seconds behind Piastri. So the interesting thing now is the fight between Norris, Leclerc, and Hamilton, because again, once Lando and Hamilton pit, they'll probably be behind Leclerc. And then we're going to have the same battle all over again. At least Leclerc, though, will have probably better tyres than what he had. Those soft tyres were absolutely finished when he came in. As lap 25, Max has got the gap to just over now 11 seconds. As we're looking at Alex Albon chasing Ocon for a mighty 16th place. And this is one of, well, it might actually be the closest battle on the track at the moment. But now we're in that part of the race where people are trying to drag their tyres out a few more laps before then making their race come alive, as Ocon pits, interestingly. Those hard tyres clearly were not working that well. So Ocon puts on the hard tyres and he now comes out in last place. He puts on the medium, sorry. I think I said hard. But no, he's on the medium tyres. So let me just update who's on what compound. Albon on the medium. Hadjar on the hard. Bortoletto, who, remember, pitted about 10 laps ago, is on the medium. And now Ocon on the medium on lap 26 of 56. Still another 30 laps to go in this United States Grand Prix. As Oscar Piastri continuing to catch Lewis Hamilton, only slightly, the gap down to about 3 seconds now, as Lewis Hamilton has dropped 5 seconds behind Lando Norris. But currently we're looking at Max Verstappen. And as it stands, Piastri is currently in 4th, so the championship deficit to Max will be 42 points, but obviously Leclerc has pitted, so it's more of a net 5th for Piastri. So at the minute, things are looking fantastic if you are Max Verstappen. As he's keeping the gap to Lando Norris at about 11 seconds. Max and Lando pretty much lapping at the same pace. Here is Leclerc, who is about to overtake Nico Hülkenberg for 8th place. And he should do. The Ferrari is normally the quickest down the straight. And Hülkenberg pretty much let him go. So there you go. 8th for Leclerc. If Lando Norris, by the way, was to pit now, I'm trying to think where Lando would come out in relation to Leclerc, as we're on lap 27. Let me just update that. This is Albon trying to pass Colapinto for 15th. These two were teammates at this Grand Prix last year. As Albon does a good switch back on Colapinto through 13. But then Colapinto dives back up the inside. Albon again does the switch back. Does he get the move done? Yes, he does. That's brilliant stuff from Alexander Albon, who's flying the flag solely for Williams now in this race. Lando Norris is, I think, still about a pit stop ahead of Leclerc. So Norris, if he was to pit now, would come out, I think, ahead of Leclerc by a second or so, which at least helps him in that battle and will then secure him 2nd place. Hamilton, though, does not have a pit stop gap to Leclerc. So Leclerc, at the minute, is in a net 3rd once everyone pits. But Leclerc needs to keep pushing hard, because if he can get back inside Norris's pit window, then 2nd is still possible, as we're looking here at Piastri and Russell, 4th and 5th on lap 28. And yeah, Leclerc is very close to getting inside Norris's pit window. So Lando might have to pit in the next lap or so to cover Leclerc off. Because Leclerc is about 21 seconds, I think, or 22 seconds behind. Leclerc, though, has some traffic. He's about a second behind Oliver Behrman, who's having a good race, Behrman. He's been running in 8th place for a while. That would be a good result for Haas, if they were to get that. As Pierre Gasly now pits from 13th. As Russell is actually catching Piastri. Gap down to a second and a half between those two. As Max being told on the radio, the plan at this stage, Max, if we can, is to extend as long as possible. We can look at an alternative strategy. To be honest, if they pitted now and Norris went way longer than them, I don't think it would make a difference. I don't think they would lose the race. I think they're way too far ahead. As Leclerc passes Behrman for 7th. Gasly, by the way, is now last, but he's on the soft tyre. So he's going to do the rest of the race, presumably, on the soft compound tyre. That's ambitious, but let's see what he can do. He's in a decent position. The soft tyre is actually handling and lasting a lot better than I expected, as all slow pit stop on the left rear for Alpine as well. Not good. Because Lance Stroll is still out there. He's now done half the race on the soft tyre and he's in 12th place. So, yeah, he's not doing too bad at all. As it is now lap 29. And Russell still catching Piastri by a 10th here, a 10th there. As Lance Stroll, talking to him, now pits. So does Isaac Hadjar. So the soft tyre for Stroll and the hard tyre for Hadjar both went as long as each other. That is quite incredible. As Lando Norris is actually catching Verstappen now, gap down to 10.2 seconds. As Piastri is asked, what about the soft tyre to the end? And Piastri responds, yeah, a bit too difficult from here, but he needs to keep an eye on his mirrors because Russell is catching. As Tsunoda defends hard to the inside against Leclerc. Leclerc, though, goes right round the outside. Brilliant move from an expert driver, and Charles Leclerc is up now to 6th place. He's cleared the midfield on lap 30 of 56. And Tsunoda now pits. As Hadjar is now last after his pit stop. Lance Stroll is now come out in 16th place. As Tsunoda pits for the soft tyre. So, yeah, the soft tyre is getting some use. Tsunoda should come out, I think, probably... Yeah, he comes out, is it ahead of Antonelli? Are we close? He gets he gets it just about. So, Tsunoda, 11th on the soft compound tyre. Antonelli has not pitted yet. As Piastri being told, Oscar Russell is within undercut range. Would you prefer to pit first onto the soft or let him go and have a pass on track? And Oscar responds, probably go first. So, looks like McLaren are about to pit Oscar Piastri for a soft compound tyre because Russell is just over a second behind. Well, now he's just randomly lost 0.4 of a second from an error. As Lando Norris, by the way, has got the gap down to Verstappen to under 10 seconds. Now 9.7 on lap 31. Lando can keep catching like he is. That's great, but I don't think Red Bull are really going to start worrying unless he gets the gap down to 5 or 6 seconds. So I think for Red Bull, I think as long as they pit in the next 10 laps, I think they'll be fine. As Piastri does pit. Soft tyres are on, and he is away. As Oliver Bearman also pits, as Leclerc now has the fastest lap. And Piastri will come out in 7th place. Hulkenberg now up to 6th. Hulkenberg obviously hasn't pitted yet. Piastri 7th. Alonso and Lawson are pitted as well. So Bearman is going to come out in 9th place behind Tsunoda. Antonelli now up to 10th. Albon up to 11th. Is a replay of Russell at turn 12 behind Piastri and locking the outside front and going onto the runoff. So let me just update that Oscar Piastri is on the soft compound tyre. Tsunoda also is on the soft, and so is Oliver Bearman. So the soft tyre working well. As Lewis Hamilton now pits. And what tyre will he go on to? He will come up behind his teammate by nearly half a pit stop. And he goes on to a set of soft tyres, I believe. He does. And yeah, Hamilton comes out in 6th place. He stays ahead of Piastri. So there you go. Let me just update that now. Lewis Hamilton on soft tyre. Hulkenberg in the Sauber doing a great job. And for Hulkenberg, if he can go another few laps, then he'll be looking good. Or maybe grabbing a couple extra points. As Antonelli has just pitted for soft tyres, he's going to come out in 18th. As Verstappen has got the gap up to Norris, back up over 10 seconds. It's now 10.6 seconds. As here comes Lando Norris. And that pretty much ends any possibility that Lando Norris can fight Max Verstappen. Not the greatest pit stop. 3.8. But yeah, all Max has got to do now is cover that off. And Max has got this race won. And that will please Red Bull, no doubt. George Russell, though, stays out. Leclerc, though, is ahead of Norris by a couple seconds. So Lando has lost position, but is now on not only fresher, but softer tyres. So surely Lando will get back past, you would think. As Norris now in 4th place. But let me just update a couple other positions. Antonelli is now 18th. Keep your eye, Antonelli might still clinch a point in this race as Colapinto now pits. As this is a replay of Norris locking his inside front at turn 12. That was right before he pitted, so that might be why they pitted him. As Max Verstappen comes in for what should be his only pit stop. And he will, not only, if this pit stop goes well, put on a new set of boots, he should come out still in the lead. He puts the soft tyres on. And Max Verstappen surely heading for victory as George Russell now pits. And Russell, of course, his battle is with Piastri, as Leclerc now is up to second. Lando Norris, by the way, 3.2 seconds behind Leclerc, so he's got to now catch up to Leclerc. As Russell does come up behind Piastri, but he's gone, what, 3 or 4 laps longer, so we'll see if that makes a difference in the end. As Nico Hülkenberg has pitted. Hülkenberg, where will he come out? He's going to come out behind Tsunoda and Behrman, and he comes out in 9th place. But he's on quite a bit fresher tyres now than Tsunoda and Behrman, who are now close on track. Behrman right up behind Tsunoda. And Hülkenberg about 5 seconds behind Behrman, so we'll see what Hülkenberg can do. As Kimi Antonelli does the fastest lap of 1:37.5. So we've got Albon in 10th. Albon, by the way, has not pitted yet. As we know, Williams always love going long with their stints. Stroll 13th, Bortoleto 14th, and then Ocon, Gasly, Antonelli, Hadjar, and Colapinto. Colapinto pitted a couple laps ago. As Behrman trying everything he can to get past Tsunoda, who seemingly has no grip at the minute. As, Behrman went for the inside line, but Tsunoda saw it coming, but then Behrman went off the track and spun around. That was absolutely awful there, as Hülkenberg is now right behind Behrman, and Hülkenberg will be wanting to get this move done because Behrman has now got dirty tyres. This is a great chance for Hülkenberg to get into 8th. And he gets a good exit. Oh, yeah, let's cut to a replay. Right, this is going to be an overtake. Fan-fucking-tastic. I think Tsunoda might get in trouble there, because Behrman went for the inside line at turn 15. Tsunoda jinked across with his car, positioned his car a bit across, and that clearly scared Behrman. And yeah, Behrman saying he moved on to braking. Yeah, Tsunoda's going to get in trouble for that. He could have caused a really bad accident with that. As Hülkenberg is now ahead of Behrman. So, well done. Again, F1 TV race direction. We were about to see an overtake, but no, replay. But there you go. Let me just update who is on what tyre compound, because the information on the left-hand side is not quite correct. So, in the top 10, we've only got 2 medium tyre runners. And that is Leclerc 2nd, who has pitted, and Albon in 10th, who has not pitted. As Lando Norris now only 1.6 behind Leclerc, so Norris is going to be right up with Leclerc in a moment. And then Alonso and Lawson in 11th and 12th are on the soft compound tyre. And then you've got Stroll on the medium, Bortoleto on the medium, Ocon is on the soft. No, he's on the medium. And he's actually just overtaken Bortoleto, who of course pitted early. Bortoleto now really suffering because of that. And then you've got Gasly, Antonelli, Hadjar, and Colapinto all on the soft tyre. So it looks like the soft tyre is the way to go. Which is possibly going to cost Charles Leclerc here. But yeah, Ocon, let me just update. Ocon is now 14th. As Max Verstappen, if you're wondering how far he is ahead of this battle, he's about 7 seconds clear of Leclerc. Norris is about 9 seconds off the lead, so Max is absolutely fine in the lead. He's not going to be caught. As we're now on lap 37, 20 laps to go. Again, looks like Max is going to win, but who will join him on the podium? It's between Leclerc, Norris, and Hamilton. And Leclerc, what a job he's doing in that Ferrari, which is, again, quite a bit off the pace of the Red Bull and the McLaren. As Alex Albon finally pits, 37 laps on those mediums, and he's finally come in. As Antonelli, by the way, is about to overtake Pierre Gasly in the next few laps, or, well, probably the next lap. As Bortoletto has pitted as well. And yeah, Antonelli now overtakes Gasly. So, Bortoletto is now last. Bortoletto pitting for the second time. I think he's the only driver out there on a two-stop strategy. Albon comes out in 17th. But he's got his pit stop done. Now he can push as hard as possible to the end. As we are now on lap 38, as Lando Norris getting some turn-in oversteer through the final corner, which is hurting him being able to catch Leclerc. But let me update a couple of the tyre graphics, as now everyone in the top 10 is on the soft tyre except for Leclerc in second. And then you've got Stroll, Ocon. Stroll and Ocon on the mediums, and then everyone behind Stroll and Ocon is on the soft tyre. So there you go. So everyone on the soft tyre except for Leclerc, Stroll, and Ocon, who are on the medium. Soft tyre, clearly the tyre to be on. That's what's making this final 18 laps or so for Leclerc so tough, as Lando gets close in the braking zone of turn 12, but just not close enough to go for an overtake. As George Russell, by the way, is catching Piastri. Whether he'll be able to overtake him or not is a different story. As Alex Albon has just overtaken Hadjar for 16th. So Albon immediately getting on with it. Keep an eye on that Williams, by the way. Remember how quick it was with Sainz early in the race. Now Albon's on fresh tyres. He, I think, is going to fly through that midfield in these final 15 laps or so. And he might take a point, because Alonso is, 12 seconds or so ahead of him. So if Albon can catch Alonso at second lap, he will take that final point. As we're now on lap 39, Lando still stuck behind Leclerc. Lewis Hamilton, interestingly, is not catching these two at the minute. Hamilton nearly half a pit stop behind his teammate. Pretty much actually is half a pit stop behind his teammate. So unless Hamilton suddenly finds tons of pace from somewhere, I think Hamilton is not going to get the podium here. Looks like it's going to be Leclerc and Norris on the podium with Verstappen, but who, in what order will it be? And this is crucial, remember, for the championship. Lando needs these extra 3 points as Stroll dives down the inside of Lawson, but Lawson cuts back and gets him on the exit of turn 1. Great racing between the two. Lance Stroll, by the way, is only about 2 seconds behind his teammate Alonso, and Stroll, I think, is on about the same length of tyres as well. So Stroll having a very good race. Yeah, for Lando Norris, of course, at the minute he is outscoring Piastri by 5 points, but he needs those extra 3 points, because those extra 3 points could be the difference between becoming a world champion and not. As we are now on lap 40. And up to turn 1, Norris, pretty close. but not close enough, as he gets a good exit though from turn 1. Just needs to keep nice and close through this first sector. And remember, by the way, what I said about Albon, that he's going to very quickly get his way through the midfield. He's already right up now behind Pierre Gasly, who was 3 seconds ahead of him when he overtook Hadjar. He's now only a second behind. So Albon is incredibly quick out there. Got to be one of the fastest drivers on the circuit right now. As DRS opens for Norris, but he's way too far back. And we'll have to wait another lap. As the gap between Piastri and Russell staying at 2.5 seconds. As Lando says, yeah man, tyres are gone. Well, that is not what you want to hear if you're McLaren, especially if you're Lando Norris, when again you desperately need these extra 3 points. As Albon passes the French driver, Pierre Gasly. So Albon now, his next target is Kimi Antonelli, 4 seconds up the road. He will be harder to catch. Antonelli's another one, keep an eye on, who is also pretty quick and might end up in the points. But Alex Albon has got to push hard now, as Antonelli's just been given a black and white flag for track limits. As Max being told that Lando's complaining about his tyres now, and that this will be more fragile, so I do think we need to look after it. I'm sure Max is managing things absolutely fine out front. But it's, what do you call it? As long as Leclerc is ahead of Max, or ahead of Norris, sorry, then Max is fine. As once again, Lando has DRS, but he's too far behind. He just cannot keep close enough at the minute. In that first sector of Stroll, yet again, tries to overtake Lawson at turn 1, but Lawson gets him back on the exit. Lawson is only just over a second behind Alonso, by the way. So Lawson right in the fight for a point as well. And remember, Aston Martin and Racing Bulls are only separated by 4 points in the championship. Racing Bulls in 6th. Aston Martin 7th. So every point matters. As Albon has just took nearly a second out of Antonelli. As Lando Norris is now a 1.5 seconds behind Leclerc. And if those tyres are finished, then that is not good news for Lando in trying to finish in 2nd. 3rd is not good enough at all for Lando. Yes, he will take, if he finishes 3rd and Piastri finishes 5th, yes, he will take 5 points from Piastri, but he needs more. As it stands, Piastri will be 17 points clear of Lando Norris going into the next Grand Prix, and Max Verstappen will be 40 points behind Piastri, and Max will also be only 23 points behind Norris. In terms of the Constructors' Championship, Tsunoda being up in 7th is great news for Red Bull. Red Bull currently scoring 31 points. Ferrari currently scoring 30 points. Mercedes only on 8 points, so Mercedes really suffering. So Mercedes, as it stands, will move on to 341 points. Ferrari, they will go up to 337, so they'll be right behind Mercedes, and Red Bull will be on 330. So, as it stands, 2nd, 3rd, and 4th in the Constructors will be separated by only by 11 points. as Lando Norris, just a replay of him losing the rear end a bit. And yeah, he has finished the tyres off. He's now 2.5 seconds behind Leclerc. And I think it's over. I don't think Lando can catch Leclerc as Verstappen complaining that he's sliding a lot. Those soft tyres are not working anymore as well as they were. Max is still 6.5 seconds clear of Leclerc, so doesn't need to worry about Leclerc behind him. But Leclerc getting the soft tyres out of the way and finishing the race with the mediums is proving to be a fantastic strategy for him. And as they're showing on the screen, Verstappen, as it stands, will only be 40 points behind with 5 races to go, meaning that Max needs to outscore Piastri by an average of, 8 points a race in the final 5 races to get the championship won. And that is very much doable. But even though Piastri's having a poor race here and a poor weekend, the championship is still very much in Oscar's hands, because if Lando does finish third, the gap will still be 17 points to Lando and 40 to Max. So if Oscar can just win one of these final 5 races after this weekend, that win might just be enough to drag him over the line. But McLaren, it's pretty clear to see, no longer have the clear fastest car anymore. In clear air, head to head, do they have a faster car than Red Bull? I still think they do. Not by much. We're talking, maybe a 1/10 of a second at most. But as long as Red Bull have a car that is equal enough to the McLaren, Max is going to win, because Max is clearly better than Piastri and Norris. But again, can he get enough points gained on Piastri and Norris to win it in Abu Dhabi? Where if Max is going to win the championship, it's going to be in Abu Dhabi. He has to just keep winning. Any DNFs at this point for Verstappen will destroy and end his chances. That's how perfect these final few races need to be. As on lap 45, Verstappen leads by 6.8. Leclerc second, 2.5 seconds clear of Norris. Hamilton is about 9 seconds behind Norris. Piastri in 5th. Russell 6th. Russell about 3 seconds now behind Piastri. Verstappen out front is about 18 seconds clear of Lewis Hamilton, and he's about 25 seconds clear of Piastri. And compared to Tsunoda, he is about 42, 43 seconds clear. So over the course of the race, it's a second a lap that Max is quicker than his teammate, which is just incredible. Good result, though, for Tsunoda. This 7th place. Remember, he started 13th. As we're looking, I think this is Oscar Piastri, who has been the least informed driver of the 3 championship contenders in these last couple races. But again, still, the championship lead is comfortable enough to where he can afford a poor race here, because he has enough of a gap on the others, and the others are not, gigantically, let's say, gaining on him. Especially Lando, his closest rival. As Alex Albon now is just over a second behind Antonelli. Antonelli trying to catch Ocon, but he's not really catching Ocon. He's only just over a second behind. as we're now looking at Hadjar trying to pass Gasly. As Norris saying on the radio, yeah, I'm just slow. I don't have the grip when I'm close. As the team's saying, okay, I understand the car feels like shit right now. The pace is really strong. We're under no threat from behind. When this carcass, I think what it was going to say was when this tyre stops overheating, then try and get back after him. As yeah, we're looking at Hadjar and Gasly fighting for 16th. Two French drivers. Hadjar, of course, is not officially announced. I think it's going to be announced in the next week. But Isaac Hadjar will be a Red Bull Racing driver next season. And we'll see just how good he is compared to Verstappen. And we'll see how well he can do. As Hadjar still stuck behind his older compatriot. I think, to be honest, the battle I want to look at right now is Antonelli and Albon, because Albon is the man on the move. Albon is only about 6 or 7 seconds now away from 10th place Alonso, who is, of course, that's the position he's aiming for. So we need to be looking at Albon really against Antonelli, because if Albon can get past Antonelli, then really I don't see what can stop Albon. As we're looking now at, I think, Oliver Behrman, who is a couple seconds behind Hulkenberg. Behrman, it's a shame that happened, that incident with Tsunoda, because 7th would have been an incredible result from Behrman, but 9th is still a very good result if he can bring it home. And I think what's hurting Albon is Antonelli has now got within a second of Ocon. So Antonelli will have DRS. We're looking now at Lance Stroll, who is still tucked right up behind Lawson. Lawson, what he needs, Lawson, is DRS from the back of Alonso. If he can get that, then can try and fight for the final point, even if he won't end up with it at the end. As Hadjar is side by side with Gasly at turn 1, but Gasly superior exit speed and keeps ahead. As we've got now 8 laps to go. Max Verstappen 7 seconds clear of Leclerc. Norris has cut the gap down to Leclerc. The gap now down to 1.8 seconds. But can he have another go at him? Who knows? As this battle for 10th, 11th, 12th rages on. And then a few seconds back, we have another battle for 13th. Ocon, Antonelli and Hadjar. And in the background, we just saw it at turn 12. Kimi Antonelli is up to 13th. And that is great news for Albon, because now Albon can get right after Ocon and get past. If Albon's going to finish in the points, he's going to have to overtake Antonelli. So let me just update that Antonelli is, of course, on the soft. Compound tyre is a replay, and yeah, went down the inside and got the move done. As Albon now within a second of Ocon. Ocon, though, is sticking with Antonelli for now. As Hadjar again up the inside of Gasly at turn 1. And they're side by side. I thought Hadjar was going to push Gasly off the track, but he doesn't. They're still side by side, and Gasly just about squeezes Hadjar out. So Pierre Gasly stays ahead in the battle for 16th place, as Lando Norris is now just 1.1 seconds behind. So what McLaren said has worked out. You know, get the overheating phase done and let's get back after him. And that's exactly what Lando has done. As I just saw there, a quick flash. Charles Leclerc is currently winning the Driver of the Day vote. And to be honest, I'd probably agree with it. I think Leclerc has been the best driver today. Done an incredible job to remain less than 10 seconds away from the race win and be holding his own in second when the Ferrari clearly is not quick enough to be in second, but he's looking like he's going to hold it. But Lando Norris is still catching, so the battle is not over. Can Lando grab these extra 3 important points? As they come through the final couple corners, and Lando now properly behind Leclerc. Now he can get the DRS as we're on lap 50. Just over 5 laps remain in Austin as Norris a lot deeper on the brakes into turn 1. Trying to get himself as close to Leclerc as he can. Really needs to make sure he's about half a second behind Leclerc on the exit of turn 11 going down the back straight. If he is, then it's possible that he can get a move done. As Albon, by the way, is stuck just over a second behind Ocon. I think Albon is going to run out of laps, even if he passes Ocon. As into turn 11, can Norris get close enough? He gets a decent exit, but I'm not sure he's close enough to actually overtake here. I think he might be a couple tenths of a second shy when they get to the braking zone of turn 12. And yeah, he is. As Leclerc loses the rear end slightly on the exit of turn 12. Just a few more laps of defense is what he needs. He's been so brilliant today in defending second. Can he do it for these final few laps? As they come through the final couple corners. Now on to lap 51. Verstappen out front, still about 7 seconds clear of Leclerc. As it's turn 1, Norris sends it. He goes up the inside of Leclerc, but Leclerc brilliantly read it. Read Norris like a book and took the switch back, the better exit line, and got the move done. With Lando, though, at least he's made Leclerc think a bit harder going into turn 1 in regards to whether Norris will go for a move. Because that's the first time he has at turn 1. But Norris quite close in turn 11. Can he get a good enough exit? He does. He's going to be right there with Leclerc. Down to the braking zone. As he gets the DRS. Leclerc defends, but not hard enough as Norris takes the inside and gets the move done. Lando Norris, crucially for his World Championship, is up to second. As Leclerc tries to come back at him, but no, it's not going to happen. And those extra 3 points that Lando has just gained there from overtaking Leclerc, that might end up winning him the championship. As the gap, as it stands, will now go down to 14 points between him and Piastri. As we begin lap 52. As Leclerc saying, oh no, Ferrari telling Leclerc on the radio, keep the pressure on because Lando has 3 strikes on track limits, and that is true. Lando has another track limit violation. He should get a 5-second penalty. Is a replay of Lando's move at turn 1. And yeah, Leclerc just read him like a book, as I said. But Norris managed to keep close enough and then Leclerc, he didn't defend the inside line well enough. He just didn't defend it well enough. If he had defended it hard and early, like he has done before, I think he could have kept Lando behind. But yeah, a bit too kind in defence, I'm afraid. But he will finish on the podium, Leclerc, which is a fantastic result. Remember, Ferrari have not finished on the podium since the Belgian Grand Prix at Spa. That was 3 months ago and a handful of races ago. As Norris now pulling away. Yeah, Leclerc is not going to be able to keep up. Here's a replay of Isaac Hadjar. And looks like Hadjar is now up to 16th. Got a good exit from turn 11 and then presumably powered past the weakest car in a straight line normally. The Alpine. And yeah, he did. Gasly didn't even defend. That was very, very easy. As we are now on lap 53 as Lando Norris continues to pull away. We're looking at Oscar Piastri currently in 5th. Piastri 6 seconds. Just under 6 seconds behind Hamilton. Russell about 2.8 behind. Piastri is going to finish in 5th. Not good enough from Oscar. If he had finished 3rd today, then I think he could have come away with his head held high a bit. But yeah, he's definitely on the back foot. Can he, though, get back on it in Mexico? We will see. Again, all he needs is one more race win, I reckon. And that should, as long as he gets good enough results in all the other races, that should be enough for him to win the championship. But winning a race right now for McLaren is pretty difficult to do. McLaren, they're not going to win this race unless Max has an issue in these final couple laps. McLaren have not won since the Dutch Grand Prix a couple months ago. And it's looking like, honestly, doesn't look like they're going to win another race this season at this rate. As this is Colapinto trying to pass Gasly into turn 1. But nothing doing. Bortoletto's right behind him. The reason we're looking at this is because Max Verstappen is about to lap these 3 cars. Well, will he lap these 3 cars? We'll have to see, because we've only got 2.5 more laps to go. I think he probably will. As Max, 8.5 seconds clear of Norris. As Max is set to take his 3rd. No, not 3rd. His 4th win in Texas in the last 5 Grand Prix here. That is an incredible record. As Colapinto still trying to pass his teammate. As Colapinto being told, okay, mate, both cars are managing here, so we just need to hold positions, please. And Colapinto says, wait, what? Hold positions? He's slow? I mean, it's the final couple laps. They just want to bring both cars home. But as long as they don't crash into each other, I think it's okay. As Max is now right behind those 3, and he's just weaved out the slipstream Bortoletto, I think, to let Bortoletto know that he's coming through, and he lets him as the 2 Alpines side by side in turn 1. And Colapinto forces his way through on the penultimate lap. Over 17th place. Alpine destined to finish last in the championship. The last time, I'm trying to think the last time the Endstone based team finish last in the championship. I don't think they ever have. This has been the worst season in their history. Whether, they're Alpine, Renault, Lotus, Tolman, Benetton. This has been pretty much the worst. But next year could be a lot better. Remember, there'll be Mercedes powered next year. And if you believe the rumours, Mercedes looks like they've got an advantage already with the power unit. So Alpine might be a pretty strong midfield outfit next season. And looks like Gasly and Colapinto is probably going to be their lineup next season. So, yeah, might not be good at the minute, but next season could very well be different at Alpine. As Max Verstappen begins the final tour of the Circuit of the Americas as Bortoleto now tries to pass Pierre Gasly, and he gets a good exit from turn 1. We're not looking at it, but no, he does get through. So Bortoleto through, and Pierre Gasly is going to finish last. As Esteban Ocon has finally been overtaken by Albon. Albon, though, took way too long to do it, so Albon not going to finish in the points, unfortunately. It'll be 14th for Albon. But for Max Verstappen, as he now completes the back straight one final time. A couple months ago, when we returned from the summer break at his home Grand Prix, everyone was in agreement that the World Championship was not possible for Max Verstappen. He even said before the summer break, the championship is over. But after winning at Monza, winning in Baku, and now taking a win in Texas, he will be only 40 points off the lead with 5 races and 2 sprints to go. It's definitely on to win 5 in a row. Max Verstappen wins the United States Grand Prix and is absolutely back in the championship conversation. Lando Norris finishes second. Charles Leclerc will finish third, and then it will be Lewis Hamilton in fourth. Oscar Piastri has caught Lewis Hamilton very quickly in these last couple laps, but he will finish only fifth. Piastri needs to get back on it in Mexico if he's to take his world championship. Piastri fifth. And then it will be Russell sixth, Tsunoda seventh, and then Hulkenberg eighth, Behrman ninth, Alonso 10th, and then it'll be Lawson, Stroll, Antonelli, Albon, Ocon, Hadjar, Colapinto, Bortoleto, and Gasly. And your only retirement, the Spaniard, Carlos Sainz. So there you go. That is the US Grand Prix. Not a great Grand Prix. We've got some good battles, but it was a pretty, 5 out of 10 experience. But I'm going to quickly ask you guys who your driver of the day is. Who is your driver of the day for the United States Grand Prix? My driver of the day is Charles Leclerc. Absolutely brilliant drive to get on the podium and to defend the way that it's Norris and even make it a battle was just so impressive. So Leclerc for me, driver of the day. But your options for driver of the day will be Max Verstappen, Charles Leclerc. By the way, thank you AM Online. It says thank you, great commentary. Thank you very much. Yuki Tsunoda. And the final option, I am going to go with Oliver Behrman. But for me, Charles Leclerc is driver of the day. And that is another top performance by the Monegasque, who once again proves that what do you call it? Once again proves why he is one of the best drivers in the world. And definitely one of the best on the grid. Is he the best, Leclerc? No, he's not. But he is, I would say, a top 3 driver on the grid. And if only he had a car that could fight for the championship, then I think he would probably deliver a world championship. But the wait goes on. But Ferrari, 3rd and 4th from that race, that's a very good result, given their issues they've had this season, and in general, and as well, given the form as of late, that's a good return to form. As Max Verstappen parks in the P1 slot, taking another win in Texas. And like I said earlier, all he needs to do, sounds easy, but I know it's not, but all he needs to do in these final 5 races, which is Mexico, Brazil, Vegas, Qatar, and Abu Dhabi, is outscore Oscar Piastri by an average of 8 points per race. And I'm pretty sure he will get the championship won. Lulu Classic says any top driver could be replaced by another top driver with a good enough car, good enough to win races. Not quite sure what that's in reference to. The only difference between Max and Charles is mistakes. Yeah, well, I'd say probably, I think a better way to say it is, I think it's his consistency. When Leclerc's at his best, he is very, very good. And is, he can absolutely rival Max Verstappen when he's at his best. But again, it's that consistency. As Lewis Hamilton parks up. Hamilton having I wouldn't say a great weekend, but good enough, given that he is clearly slower than Leclerc. As Serigara saying, 49 podiums now for Leclerc, which is a decent number. As Kimi Antonelli, by the way, took the fastest lap. Crystal saying pre-Monza Max was 104 points behind Oscar. Now he's only 40 behind the driver. It still does matter. Absolutely, and yeah, the Red Bull car has improved in the last few races. We know this, but Max has still needed to be at his best to deliver the wins to get to this point. So, yeah, the car's improved, but he still needs to make the difference that he does to get the wins and to get the, to catch Piastri in the way he is. As the podium celebrations shall begin in a moment. Serigara saying that Max is now on 68 wins. He's only, what? Is it 23 wins behind Michael Schumacher now? He's going to overtake Michael Schumacher for wins in, probably the next 3 or 4 years. And at this rate, I think Max will end up with the most race wins. Looney Classic saying, first 10 races of 2022 proof that Charles can take on Max and beat him. Absolutely. When the car's good enough, Leclerc can get the job done, but he needs to be given the chance. And he hasn't enough. But I know there's only been 24 votes in the poll, but there is a pretty clear winner. I asked you guys, who is your driver of the day for the US Grand Prix? 24 votes, and 71% of that vote has gone to Max Verstappen. Max was great today. I personally disagree, but yeah, he was absolutely brilliant. 21% for Leclerc, 8% for Tsunoda, and 0% for Oliver Behrman. Thank you guys for coming along for this race watch along. Been great to have you. And yeah, been great to have you all weekend. Just to let you guys know, tomorrow I will be uploading my US Grand Prix review podcast. That will be uploaded probably tomorrow evening. So yeah, make sure to check that out. And then for next weekend's Grand Prix, remember I am doing a qualifying watch along, but I am not doing a race watch along. So I'll only be doing one stream next weekend, and I will be live for qualifying next Saturday at 8:30 p.m. UK time, an hour and a half that is, before qualifying begins, for a very important qualifying session on the streets of Mexico City. And then even though I'm missing the race, on Monday I will be doing a race review podcast, which will be uploaded on Monday evening next Monday. But guys, thanks for coming along for this race watch along, and until my podcast tomorrow, and until the next Grand Prix in Mexico City, make sure to join me next Saturday night at 8:30 p.m. for qualifying. Until then, guys, it has been me, Chazza HD. Goodbye.